Hey, what's going on? This is the OG Kickoff, a Double Down and Next Round media production. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, Tony Petitti, Big Ten Commissioner. Not sure if you've heard of him. Not Kevin Warren. Might as well be. He wants us to know that the only way to save college sports is to have an expanded playoff to 24, not 16. Heavens, not 16. 2014 playoff is the only way that college sports will survive. The financial benefits are just too great to ignore. Good God, what are we doing?
We're all looking for the guy who did this. You know, it's shocking that the guy who thought that LA fit in the same geographical footprint as Iowa was like, hey, you know what? I've got the next answer. Don't you worry.
I love hearing Tony Petitti tell us that, I disagree with the crowd that says the regular season will be ruined. Look, we do that too much with every change in college football because the regular season is sacred. We still think that fall Saturdays are sacred. They will still be sacred even with a 2014 playoff, but some of the shine of what could potentially happen is, I think, really significant. It would be felt for decades. So seeing the Big Ten meetings, which, by the way, I think it was Reddit College Football that posted like where they were hosting the Big Ten meetings, just off a cliff, I think in California. Looked incredible, $700 something a night to be able to stay there. There's just not enough money. Seeing all of this discussion unfold and then seeing the SEC and ESPN resist the 2014 playoff, being seemingly the last parties left who are resisting this, it makes me hope that we will get this stalemate and that it'll stay at 12. And I think that there's a chance that that'll happen. Knock on wood. That's the only thing I'm rooting for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always pushing towards more revenue, right? But I do think at some level, the NCAA has a responsibility to the athletes.
They don't have any power in this at all.
I understand, but I'm saying that some person, I know they're all greed monsters, they're all the penguin from Batman, but on some level, you have to go, hey, you know, the NFLPA has been pushing back on every game that's added and taking out preseason games and trying to get extra bye weeks. On some level, you have to hit the terminal velocity of what a college athlete's body at age 19 can handle. And maybe there is a limit to greed. You know, I don't think that we're in a place right now where we've seen it. And I've referenced before kind of that super league that they tried to make in soccer where fans literally took to the streets and like revolted. I don't think we have the appetite for that here in America. But I think at some point, people have to, you know, voice their displeasure and say, you know, we're done with this. And I will say, though, there's kind of a nuanced layer to this. I was talking to my nephew the other day. He like handed me an FSU championship because his family went to FSU, handed me with his FSU championship helmets. He goes, dude, look at the scores on this. And I looked at it and they were just mollywhopping people. And it feels like a million years ago. It was 2013. I was like, hey, you know, like the average Saturday, we've talked about this before. The average Saturday right now is better than the average Saturday was back then. Those great upsets that we felt back then were so rare, and that's why they were so beautiful. And so I think I'm cooling off on the prospect of, oh, let's decrease the playoff from 12, which is not going to happen. I understand that. And I'm starting to kind of like the format we're at now, just in time for them to try to double it on me.
Yeah. By the way, great pod today. Matt Schick, longtime ESPN anchor. He's going to join us in a bit, and we're going to have Lad of the Week. We have all been the drum team that we're going to get to in a second here. But yeah, Will, you know, you talk about the NFLPA pushing back on every addition to the NFL schedule. And if only there was something like that in college athletics where, you know, the athletes could actually have a voice and be able to have things that are written in contracts and be able to exercise those rights. Yeah, look, and hoping that the NCAA does anything. I mean, if the NCAA literally whiffs on the Brendan Sorsby case because of a state judge in Lubbock who may or may not have a couple of degrees from Texas Tech, I don't think I can expect the NCAA to have any teeth left whatsoever. So I won't bank on that. But yeah, being at this place is just, it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. And it's so frustrating to watch this play out and to watch Tony Petitti just be like, oh yeah, you know, this is just something that like we feel like we have to do. And man, conference championships are dead. So here's why we got to make up that revenue. It's like, well, why are they dead? Why are they dead? They weren't dead when the playoff wasn't expanded. And yeah, this is the place that we're at with college football, where I just love seeing a random poll that comes out of, do you want the 2014 playoff? Like, I can't remember who it was. Was it Cole? It might've been Cole the other day who tweeted it out, or Jocks or something like that. It was like 85% no. Ari, same thing, like 85% no. that's just the way that college football, unfortunately, is right now being discussed as we sit here in late May. So
And I'll
yeah.
say too, thank goodness for you know, LSU coaches just egregiously trying to break the rules because that might actually get us real reform. If Will Wade goes and gets a bunch of 30-year-olds
Oh,
from
Will Wade, good.
Turkmenistan,
Will Wade, good for college
well,
athletics.
he's breaking the
Oh,
rules so egregiously that I think there are going to need to be rules. I've been making this point in Alaska. It's like, dude's going to Europe and getting grown men on some level. I think the combined hatred for Will Wade and Lane Kiffin might actually create some change that will ultimately be good for the sport because those dudes, like the Washington quarterback that Lane tried to get out of his contract based on you don't really play or you don't really get paid for playing, you get paid for NIL. Like, I think that we need to have some cases like a Darian Mensah kind of go that next step where people get upset and it'll be coaches and it'll be like powerful people that actually get some type of real regulations in here and not just rewrite the rules every 2 or 3 years.
we'll put it on a quote card. Will says, LSU cheating so hard, actually good for college sports. You're welcome. Will Ogburn.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say it's not even a homer take. I think everyone's talking about what LSU coaches are doing and how wild it is right now. But I think that's kind of the point: is until we have real rules, we've always done the oh, actually, we're doing this the right way when people know they're not. I like that they're just brazen. They're like, we're just going to break these rules, and so I think we just need to have harder rules.
Harder rules, like a hard and fast 2014 playoff. Sweet, cool. Looking forward to it. I'm sure that won't have any lasting ramifications. Yeah. Obviously, don't want to just sit here and talk playoff today. I actually kind of avoid talking playoff, if I'm being 100% honest, or at least the structure of it, as opposed to who's going to make it. I think we're going to do that pod next week, unveil a playoff bracket, which is just the type of thing that you can do in May. But in terms of the expansion talk, I get sick of it. I get really, really sick of it. And every time I get asked about it on radio or on a show or something like that, I kind of speed through an answer because I just want to talk about the next thing because of how frustrated I get. So that's kind of what we'll do today. And instead, we're going to talk about some dudes. Will, you want to talk about some dudes?
Love talking dudes.
Who doesn't? Dudes talking on a microphone about other dudes.
Dudes rock.
Dudes do rock. These dudes rock. These dudes rock every single year that we do this. This is the All Bang the Drum team, year 6 of the All Bang the Drum team. How about that? I had to go back and think to myself, man, have I been doing this since 2021? Been doing this every year that you and I have been doing this show together. And yeah, this process has evolved over the years. And there are some changing parameters since the first year that we've done this. One guy from each SEC team, so that way I can't just put like 3 Ole Miss guys on here and be called an Ole Miss homer or something like that. Cannot be a player who earned all SEC honors last year. Okay, if he's showing up on preseason first team all SEC lists, he doesn't need the drum banged for him either. So I'll leave those guys off. Again, there's some of that's a little bit predictive, and we'll see how that plays out at media days. Some publications have already come out with their all SEC teams. If he is a starting quarterback, he doesn't need the drum banged for him. He doesn't. It's QB1 in the SEC, many of which are 7-figure guys. If they're good, you know that they're good. And if you don't know that they're good, your fan base knows that he's good. So I will keep QB1s off this list. I try to get a variety of positions on the All Bang the Drum team. The goal is to identify in the preseason or in the middle of May, guys who either need more love or you should have on your radar. Maybe they don't need love yet. Maybe they don't need love just yet, but just kind of a buy stock now type of guy. And then call it a breakout guy, whatever you want. And if this could also be the type of thing that maybe you're, sitting there at a social gathering in the summer and you're at a barbecue or something like that. You're talking to random people on the beach, or, you're maybe talking to the cashier at Publix or something like that. You could just casually bring up these guys on the All Bang the Drum team and sound smart by doing so, but not like in too aggressive of a way here. We don't really need to all of a sudden freak out the cashier at Publix, but if the conversation comes up, just be able to kind of handle yourself. You don't want to be on your heels with these types of things. So I try and bless you with things like this throughout the offseason because just like talking about dudes. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. You're right. This is a fixture here. We'll try to get a graphic going on this. And honestly, this is one where I think we're totally fine when people shouting out guys from their own teams because guys know some stories that we kind of don't. So if you're like, hey, I knew this guy in high school, he was awesome, let us know.
Yes, would love to hear that. Email us. the OG Kickoff at gmail.com. Would love to be able to hear that. And yeah, that's kind of the fun thing about doing a list like this, as opposed to here's what my first team all SEC ballot looks like. This is entirely subjective. This is so subjective. And we've had guys who have made the All Bang the Drum team because I like their nickname. Who was it? It was Cheeks a few years ago. Oh, we loved us some Cheeks. It was what was the Vandy player last year? CJ Hurd. His nickname.
The Sea Snake.
Sea Snake. That's right.
And he was a baller. You put us on. Yeah.
He and still is a baller. Going to be really good on that Vandy defense this year. So we will go in alphabetical order for the SEC. Let's start with Alabama. Well, I have Kedrick Bingley Jones.
Of course. Who could forget?
A lad. You're going to love this guy. I said that I thought Alabama kind of made a misstep with its portal approach with too many young guys in the trenches. I probably should have just limited that to the offensive side of the ball. There is a chance that we see the average age of the Alabama line of scrimmage actually look somewhat normal, and it maybe doesn't reflect that they went after a lot of these young guys, just in terms of the offensive linemen that they went after in the portal. And I think much like how there are certain guys on a team who balance the team GPA out, Kedrick Bingley Jones is going to average out the team age of that Alabama defense. He is a 7th-year guy in the middle of that defensive line. He's either going to be 24 or 25 during fall camp. Couldn't find the exact couldn't find the pinpointed birthday based on year, kind of guessing based on the fact that he's a class of 2020 guy. And you're wondering, Connor, how is this class of 2020 recruit still eligible? Aren't all the COVID guys gone? Haven't we moved past this? No, we haven't. No, we haven't. Here's how this works. 2020, he was hurt all year. COVID season doesn't count anyways. 2021, he plays in 11 games at UNC. That does count. 2022, plays in 11 more games at UNC. That's half of his eligibility gone after the year 2022. That was a long time ago. 2023, he starts games. He gets hurt. That doesn't count. Medical redshirt. 2024, he transfers to Mississippi State, starts 4 games, not officially a medical redshirt because he had already used it, but noteworthy. We're going to circle back to that in a second here. 2025, he starts all 13 games at Mississippi State, has his best season to date. 2026, he transfers to Bama, unsure if the NCAA will be able to rule him eligible for the 2026 season, which would be his 7th. And he's trying to be able to basically say, hey, remember 2024? I know I've already used my medical redshirt. I only played 4 games that year. Give me another year of eligibility. Turns out the NCAA says, you're right. You get to play another year. Call it Bama bias. Call it whatever you want. He's playing football in the year 2026. He's a mid-20s guy. Year 7. Being able to have a guy who started he started his college career in the ACC, which was won by Trevor Lawrence that year. This dude's old. He's old, man. I love it. Valuable player when healthy. Bama's actually really old on defense. And I know I made jokes at the start of this, but he is going to be part of a group that has a very, I don't want to say they have a definite sense of urgency with the age, knowing how many of these guys are draft eligible at season's end. I think he's going to be a really good interior rusher for Kane Wommack's defense. Perhaps make some of those loud LT Overton plays. Here's a fun one. Just in case we haven't had enough fun with his age, there's a good chance that he is in the same Alabama draft class as Ryan Coleman Williams. Will, how old was Ryan Coleman Williams when Kedrick Bingley Jones first enrolled at North Carolina as a true freshman? How old do you think Ryan Coleman Williams was?
Oh, gosh, 13?
12. Same draft class, maybe.
You almost got a bellowous laugh out of me there. That is nuts. That was a child.
Yeah. Old man. I love old dudes that are able to come in and fill an immediate need in the portal. It's become one of my new favorite things to watch for. I think coaches have recognized the value in it, and being able to pluck someone that has that experience at the power conference level, who, when healthy, has been a really good player. Nice addition for Alabama. Not a guy that you'll probably hear about a whole lot.
This was like a good Mac Brown team. This is like how long ago this was.
I think Drake May was, oh my God, how old was Drake May? Drake May was a sophomore when he started his career, I want to say. Or maybe he was he wouldn't have been in the same class as Drake May, was he? Oh, he might have been. Was he in the same class as No, not Drake May. Sam Howell. My bad. No. Drake May is way younger. We're talking way younger. Mixed up my UNC quarterbacks. My bad. with all due respect, Sam Howell also looks like he's about 35. He's looked like he's 35 since he was 19 years old. So maybe that comes across a little bit differently, but yeah, he's not going to be carded anytime soon. We'll say that.
Going to be calling him Unk. I love his profile picture. This is going to be a bad day for eye contact because I'm going to be flying around looking these guys up. And this is one of those bios that UA was just kind of like, hey, man, some stuff happened. Because like, what you gonna get? Like, he's here now. And there he is. All right. So, yeah, no, I kind of love guys like this, honestly. It kind of hits on the point I was talking about earlier. Like, where is that line? I just kind of have no issues with guys like this. I think it's kind of cool that they love being in college.
Yeah, smart guy to take a risk on. I don't know how much of a risk it is in terms of the Alabama budget and whatnot, but get a guy that can be an interior rusher and he can make some really big plays for you. And if he's able to, kind of be that healthy veteran presence middle of your defensive line, you'll be better for it. All right, Arkansas. Kamori House, the defensive back. Another former UNC transfer. I don't know if they're calling him Unk. The nickname just kind of sitting right there. Started his career at Washington, actually. I'm always a little hesitant when we see a guy at 3 schools in 3 years. A little bit different in college as opposed to high school. I think that's a lot worse in high school than it is in college. But another former Washington transfer, Jeremy Bernard, is a good reminder that sometimes guys can emerge despite the 3 schools in 3 years thing. So we won't hold that against him. This guy was voted a team captain last year at UNC, even though he was a second-year guy who was on the other side of the country the previous year. All he did last year was lead UNC in tackles for a Bill Belichick defense. He led them in tackles in 7 games. He's sort of a hybrid guy, kind of an undersized linebacker. You'll see him listed as a defensive back somewhere, linebacker, others, whatever. He's a really good tackler in space. Was probably asked to do a little bit too much last year for a UNC defense that just didn't have the dudes. I've talked about this before, made some nice schematic progress under Belichick, but they just were never going to be like a set it and forget it type group. That might be the case against him this year, is that he's kind of put in some tough spots. I think the Arkansas defense, based on what I've heard so far, is going to be much better than the Arkansas offense. Year one, Ryan Silverfield, he's going to be a big part of that. He's kind of like the kid in school you meet who's the Army brat. And I don't know if you remember these types of kids like in high school or middle school. And the Army brat kids, are we still allowed to say Army brat, by the way? I should check. That's still...
I don't think that's like a slur or anything. I think that they welcome that. Yeah.
We don't say sitting Indian style anymore. We say crisscross applesauce. I'm not sure if there was like an Army brat thing. That I don't want to be disrespectful. We support the troops. But he's kind of like one of those that you meet in school and he's super confident in him. Like they're the types of kids that were always super confident in themselves because they've moved all over the place. They've had to learn how to adapt and they know what it means to kind of fit in instantly. And it's not to say that they just like adapt their personality to their surroundings, but they just know who they are. They've kind of had to figure it out. I don't know how many games that Arkansas is winning in year one under Ryan Silverfield. Like it could be a 4-win team, maybe a 5-win team. But I do know that a guy like House, who can line up anywhere, should be able to give Ron Roberts that defense a better chance this season.
Yeah, I love it when a guy hears the Ludacris song Area Codes and takes that as a challenge. To go. I love how recruiting works too, where it's like, I'm committed. I'm going to Washington. Okay, just kidding. I'm actually going to go Tobacco Road, UNC. Okay, actually, here we are. I'm going to be right in the middle, split the difference. And so, yeah, I really do sympathize for these coaches because you just never know. You get a guy 1 week and he wants one thing and another, but that's actually a great way to build a team. And you talked about it. Arkansas struggled on defense last year. I think it's no secret. They were fun on offense, and to completely flip the identity, a guy that's been able to pick up systems quickly, fun name, just bang that drum.
Yeah, the ability to play in 4 time zones is very much on the table. And look, for the sake of Arkansas fans, I hope he's your guy this year, and maybe he stays next year as well. He is draft eligible at the end of this season, but that's sitting right there for him because started his career Pacific time zone, Eastern time zone. Now he's in Central, a little Mountain time. Next step, maybe just doing around the world tour. I don't know. That'd be an interesting conversation to have in an NFL with an NFL scout being like, so why did you go to 4 schools in 4 years? He said, just kind of want to play in all the time zones. Sounded fun. Sounded really, I played well at all 4 schools. You going to knock me for it?
I got a whole new wardrobe here, coach. What do you think? That's ROI.
Yeah. He's Arizona's, I always mess up Arizona. They're sometimes the daylight saving thing always messes me up. I don't know. Maybe Arizona's not. Name a mountain time zone school. Vegas, UNLV, go play for Dan Mullen next year. I don't know. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe he won't. Think he makes a lot of plays this year. Okay, Auburn, Jake Johnson. Yeah, that Jake Johnson, the tight end. I love a little brother, Will. I do. I love a
Surely
little.
not Max Johnson's brother, Jake Johnson.
Oh, yes, it is. It is that Jake Johnson.
Oh my God, I'm
Yep.
in love with this list you guys did. Okay,
Yep.
wow.
I love a little brother who finally gets to be on his own. I've told my brother this before. It's kind of an awkward thing to say to your older brother, but I always say, like, yeah, my favorite years of school were like 8th grade and then my senior year of high school, because I kind of, before college, we're just talking about, because it was after my brother had like graduated and gone to high school or gone to college. And I kind of just got to like I felt like I got to be my own person. I wasn't just the worst version of an O'Gara. And that's kind of what happened with the Johnson family this year. It works out well, I think, for Jake, and he's going to be in a really good spot. They're two. By the way, yes, Max is still in school. I buried the lead by saying this. Max is at Georgia Southern this year. They are 4 hours apart, and they live. The Johnson family lives in Georgia. I think they live in Coney, which I'm butchering the pronunciation of that. But Big Bad Brad is going to turn that 4-hour drive into like 2:30, 3, maybe. I don't know.
He's gonna be ripping it. What do you think Big Bad Brad drives?
Not slow. Not slow, man. He's hauling.
Mach 2 in a minivan, that Big Bad
Yes,
Brad.
he's hauling. I do wonder, though, looking back on Jake's career, how much pressure he kind of felt to follow Max around. And like, he's a blue chip player in his own right. So I'm not saying that he was just some throw in. He definitely was not that, but spent all 4 years with his brother. And this is his first opportunity to be on his own in year 5. I thought he was really starting to figure things out in year 2 at A&M, getting to be able to catch touchdown passes from his brother after his brother takes over the starting job. A&M had the injuries at quarterback and ends up being a lost season. Jimbo got fired in 23. He goes to UNC in 2024. Max Johnson gets hurt in the first game of that season against Minnesota. It was devastating. So he stays for the Belichick era, but they're a total dumpster fire on offense last year. They didn't have a clue. So now he's got a real shot with a real respected offensive mind in Alex Golesh. They have 3 tight ends that they got out of the portal. So they're going to be using plenty of 12 personnel with the 2 tight end sets. There is a lot you have to do in this offense. And there's a lot that you have to account for if you're on the other side of the ball. And with that tempo, that could definitely be a favorable spot for Jake Johnson, where he hasn't really been in a lot of like up-tempo, high-powered offenses like that. If you recall, that wasn't necessarily what they were running, his last year at A&M. And, I think that there could be some spots where they recognize that they get him on a gassed up linebacker or something like that. I just feel like he's going to be a real red zone threat this year. And maybe there's a game or two where he slips past the defense, makes a big time touchdown grab late in the game. And we'll all go, hey, wasn't that good for Jake Johnson? Well, isn't it awesome to see that guy kind of celebrating and doing his own thing? So I do find myself rooting for Jake Johnson.
I'm sorry, but I feel allowed me here. This guy was with Max Johnson at every step but LSU, but he was at LSU for 2 years. So like there was a whole underclassman career before this. I'm looking at this game log for Max Johnson or the sports reference. I see 3 senior years already on here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess there's some injuries in here. I guess he played 5 games the last 2 years, so that kind of checks out. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm so shocked that the most productive year that Jake Johnson has been at A&M at 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. You're right. I remember him being this massive recruit that after he went to A&M, it was like, actually, Max is not like the quote unquote talented or highly rated brother. And again, we've been joking about Big Bad Brad. If you've been with the show for a while, their dad is the Buccaneers old quarterback, and follow his TikTok. He's so awesome. I think he still follows me on Twitter, and he just like roots for his sons. He's super cool. So these guys are great for college football. I don't think either of them are going to be like starting for the Pats one day or anything, but this just goes to show where you're at. Cause I'm sure when they pulled up at their respective spots, LSU and A&M, they were like, I will finish my career here. And again, got decently productive as a sophomore for A&M. But I think there's still something there. I think he just kind of made some rough decisions. That's what happens when you commit to Bill Belichick in the year of our Lord 2024.
Yeah. 2025, technically, that he played for him. But yeah, I mean, because he was there in 24 as well. And just maybe it could have been different had he got to play with his brother that year and instead did not. And it was just ugly situation. So hoping for the best for him in Alex Golesh's offense. Florida, Kanijah Harris, the offensive lineman. Pretty well documented how John Summerall received praise for keeping some of those valuable young skill players on offense. Jaden Baugh, Vernell Brown the third, Dallas Wilson, but kind of lost in the shuffle of that. And some of those key returners was keeping a multi-year starter to anchor that offensive line we all agree that Florida this year, kind of whoever wins that quarterback battle, even if it's Tramel Jones Jr., Aaron Philo, whatever it is, they need to be a run-first team. They're going to build that offense around Jaden Baugh. This is going to be a really favorable spot, I think, for a quarterback eventually. Early on, though, it's all about establish that run as much as possible. And you're able to do that with someone coming back like Harris. Use that left guard, get him pulling in space too. He was originally one of those big time recruits for IMG, or that was out of IMG for Billy Napier, where that was something we talked about a lot early on with Billy Napier. Is one of the defining things is going to be if he can kind of right that wrong from the Dan Mullen era and actually recruit IMG, because Dan Mullen could not. And yes, he was not necessarily part of this dramatic turnaround or anything like that. But I still thought that offensive line the last 2 years was more part of the solution than the problem. It's good to be old in the trenches, something that you're going to hear me say a lot. Maybe we should have made it an evergreen college football rule for the OG kickoff. Nonetheless, it will still be said ad nauseum this offseason. I love that he was clearly prioritized by this coaching staff. And I think someone who had options, he could have, gone elsewhere to spend his last year of eligibility. Maybe could have gone to the NFL. Could be a bit of a transition to gap scheme for him. We'll see how that plays out. But just an underrated retention piece, I thought, for that coaching staff. And by the way, exactly a week after he announced that he was coming back, Jaden Baugh announced he was coming back too. Not a coincidence.
I need you all to Google this guy. I've been trying to find a way to get this image on here, but it's a WebP image, and we know those are the devil. But this guy is one of the coolest recruiting photos I've ever seen. He's holding what appears to be a BCS championship football with as if it's a rocket launcher, and he's wearing a camo. Oh my gosh, these sunglasses. He has like pit vipers on. He's got the Florida bucket hat on. Wow, you are cooking so far. I didn't think an O-lineman could be this fun. But exactly what you said, man. Like the Billy Napier stuff was so interesting. I think we hit on it, and I didn't really see a ton of people doing it, so I'll do it again. The O-line was usually where coaches struggle. It's actually kind of wild how Billy was able to do the hard things, like have quarterbacks that were pretty good, but an offensive line, but not the easy things like call logical plays if you're an offensive guy. And so that was like what kind of got hollowed out a little bit last year. They were still not terrible there. So that being said, like prioritizing that immediately for Summerall, who I agree with you, smash mouth guy. Like this is the exact type of guy that you could see as like, a future, I don't know if they've named captains or anything, but you just see the vibe of everywhere he's been. He just is a gravitational personality. So would love having this guy on my team.
Yeah, when you're watching Jaden Baugh highlights at any point, there's a good chance that you're going to see Kanacha Harris making some sort of an impactful block on them. That's just kind of the way that this works. So this is a huge piece of Florida establishing a year one offense. And I think if Buster Faulkner has it his way, this is a team that is over 200 rushing yards per game. And they're a team that is able to succeed even if they kind of go back and forth at quarterback. I don't think that's ideal. I don't think that's what he's rooting for necessarily, but figure out that part and then hope that everything else can kind of fall into place. And I know that sounds similar to what Billy Napier was kind of banking on. I would still say that Buster Faulkner and the things that he can do schematically a little bit more advanced than what Billy Napier is doing. So that's the good news of that. And maybe there's going to be a little bit more nuance, tougher to defend. All right, Georgia. Isaiah Canyon. Big fan. Really big fan. As much as I am skeptical of the depth of the Georgia receiver room, I think it's one of the biggest questions of whether or not Georgia can win a national championship or play for one this year. I also keep coming back to, wait a minute, what if Isaiah Canyon is just awesome? Because the Georgia Tech transfer is really, really good. And I think Georgia fans saw it up close last year. Some of the catches that he was making in that game against Georgia were not necessarily highlight real type plays. We're like, all right, this cat's doing some pretty good things as a sophomore in an offense that wasn't exactly pass first. Well, he's trying to do something that no Georgia receiver has done since 2009.
What's that, Connor?
No first team All SEC wide receiver for Georgia since AJ Green, 2009.
Wow.
Yeah.
They've been slinging that thing. They've had quarterbacks. They just haven't had dominant number ones, or they had one who was a little crazy.
Who's a little crazy? Was George Pickens crazy?
George Pickens, Hoover High great.
Yeah, George Pickens getting hurt going into his pre-draft season probably played a part in that. I still thought he was a little bit overrated in college. I was a big Kyrus Jackson fan. Those who know. But yeah, that is kind of a crazy thing to consider. I don't think that's necessarily the standard that Canyon's going to be held to this year. I don't think it's like a disappointment if he ends up not making first team All SEC, but I'm not going to rule that out because I love his catch radius. I think he projects to have even more production this year in an offense that has emphasized this offseason. They need to be able to stretch the field more consistently. That's going to be a bigger part of their offense. They don't necessarily have the Zachariah Branch where all of a sudden it's going to be, screen pass 2 yards past the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage for the best receiver on the field. He had 8 catches on passes that traveled 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage last year. Really good ability to track the football. Always seems to kind of know where he is. Really good spatial awareness. He's going to make a handful of plays in the end zone that I think that other guys just won't. And it won't even necessarily be this, oh my God, top 10 play or something like that. But he'll just do it in a really smooth way that makes you think like, oh, that guy made that look like an NFL player. It was almost too routine the way that he made it look. He's not a big yak guy, yard after catch, but only 2 drops on 56 career targets. There's no way that guy's going to have the Zachariah Branch route tree. And I am a Zachariah Branch respecter. I thought Georgia did a lot of smart things with him as the focal point of the passing game, but he's going to be asked to do a lot more for Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar Stockton knows he needs to have a different sort of approach, I think, in some of those spots where I thought he was starting to develop that confidence late in the season. Connor Riley, who does great work for Dog Nation throughout this possibility. And I'm curious your take on this, Will. Is it possible that we look back at this season and the production from Isaiah Canyon is really similar or equal to the production of Cam Coleman, and one is way more expensive than the other? Is that possible? Because I think it kind of is.
Man, so I think that is a great segue into what I was going to say here, which is that this guy is a freak. Roman Reigns famously played at Georgia Tech. This guy looks like Roman Reigns. He's 6'4", 220, and he could go up and get it. He's fast. He's like huge. He's jacked. Like, yeah, this is the type of stuff when people get on to Kirby about like the portal. These are the type of guys that Kirby could find in the portal where you're like, so in comparison to Cam Coleman, what do we love about Cam Coleman? His size, his strength, his speed. This guy is a little bit of a caffeine-free diet in that way where he's got the same kind of measurables, maybe not the exact straight line speed, but enough in college to where it's negligible, right, between the two. So, yeah, if they could actually air the ball out, trust Gunnar Stockton in I guess, year 2 as a starter, I think this could be a guy that everybody knows his name, and Kirby is sitting there going, yep, got that guy to the scrap heap from across town.
Yeah, to be clear, all things equal, give me Cam Coleman over Isaiah Canyon.
Of course.
Okay? Not say Texas fans don't get upset with me. Auburn fans don't get upset with me either. But if you're missing out on the Cam Coleman sweepstakes, and that's the consolation prize, I think there's a chance that you could look up at season's end and feel like, we actually got a lot of value out of this. And we ended up having a true go-to guy wherein we felt like there were more things that were opened up in the passing game, doing the things that he did as a guy that wasn't even draft eligible yet, in an offense that wasn't necessarily pass first. That bodes well. That bodes really well. I'm always going to have a little bit of that skepticism when it comes to the Georgia skill players, just because from a production standpoint, you just don't look at them and think like, oh yeah, bona fide star. They, rewrote SEC record books or something like that at running back or receiver. Like, you just haven't seen that. Brock Bowers was obviously in a class of his own, but you haven't seen that with the running backs. You haven't seen that with the receivers. But man, the more I watch of Isaiah Canyon, I'm like, this dude can play. He can go up and get it, and he's going to be a really, really fun guy to watch. Crossing enemy lines too. Never discount what that means. And knowing that guy's going to he's got a little bit of something to him. Former Notre Dame commit, by the way.
I will say on that note too, it's pretty funny. You've heard me say I really just like big wide receivers. I grew up watching, the Terrell Owens, Randy Moss. Like, I don't know why Georgia, who has struggled to kind of fill that void with wide receiver, like everybody since AJ Green, that's been a big name, has been smaller, right? Even George Pickens was smaller. Mecole Hardman smaller, same deal. So it's like they've tried to fill these voids with these kind of shiftier, smaller guys. And I think breaking that mold is such a great idea when you have an offense that's so timing based, because having a guy who can go high point, go up and get it and kind of fall down for 3 yards just fits that offense a little bit better than having another guy. And again, love Branch. I think that's the best that type of guy can be in that offense. Exactly what you just said, hitting the swing passes, hitting the screens, to get open that way. Whereas when you have a bigger guy, when you get that play action and he's open over the top, it's see ya.
Yeah, it could be a better version of Noah Thomas.
I was thinking of Noah Thomas, actually. I want to, yeah, but you're right. Like, when they use Noah Thomas, he was effective. And I think that just goes to show why those big prototypical receivers were more in vogue in the pro style offense back in the day.
Yeah, Georgia's banking on a few things with that wide receiver room, one of which being London Humphreys being the player they hoped he'd be coming over from Vandy. They're really putting a lot of stock in those young underclassmen receivers to step up and look the part this year. But above all else, like they need Kenyon to be a go-to guy. If he can be a go-to guy, that changes what this offense is capable of. All right, Kentucky. Name you've heard before if you are an OG listener of this show. CJ Baxter, the running back. I can't quit him. Can't quit him, Will. Won't do it. A guy that 2 years ago, I said, I think he's going to lead the SEC in rushing in 2024. Kiss of death. Did not play a game. Tore his ACL. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Has not been able to stay healthy. Him getting banged up in September of last year was a devastating blow. Obviously, a devastating blow for him personally, but it really hurt Texas's offense kind of find a rhythm. They were rotating backs with Wisner throughout the first part of that year. And it just seemed like neither one of those guys could stay healthy. And even if they had been good on the offensive line, maybe it would have been a struggle, but they just could not find two guys they were hoping were going to be really big parts of their offense to be able to stay on the field for long stretches at a time. And I think that if you look back on that year, last year, you go, it's just a lost year. It is an entirely lost year, and that's unfortunate. It's wild to think that the last time that CJ Baxter had a rushing touchdown, it was for a Big 12 Texas team in the playoff semifinals against Kalen DeBoer-led Washington. How about that? That seems like a long time ago. A lot of things have happened since then. Still a young player, though. He is entering technically year 4 of college. I wanted to see him in Indiana. Full disclosure here. I really did. When I saw that he was taking a visit to Indiana, I was like, ooh, that would be, we can have some fun with that one. Instead, he ends up in a Will Stein backfield, the first Will Stein backfield at Kentucky, which is also going to feature Javante Barnes, who spent 4 years at Oklahoma. He flashed, I thought, during different points, but I still think Baxter has the most upside in that room. I'm just really intrigued by what they're going to be able to do year 1 after seeing the way that Will Stein approached the running game at Oregon. Oregon was basically on its 4th string running back in that playoff game against IU, and it finally caught up to them, though I don't think a healthy backfield would have saved them or been the difference that day specifically, but they still had a top 20 rushing attack with a group that racked up 35 rushing touchdowns last year. And obviously the Oregon offensive line built a little bit differently than this Kentucky offensive line. That's a huge question mark. They recruited a lot of talented, decorated transfers to be able to rebuild the Big Blue Wall. We know that. But there's a reason why Kentucky spent big both on the offensive line and to be able to get a former 5-star back like Baxter, who, as I always mention, had 100 scrimmage yards in a playoff game as an 18-year-old. Okay, let's not dismiss that. Give that guy a healthy season. Maybe you'll see why in a loaded backfield that Texas had back in 2023, this guy was a day 1 starter as a true freshman. I have not sold my CJ Baxter stock. He is technically, I think, a return member of the All-Band the Drum team from a couple years ago. I don't care. He's worth it.
Yeah, again, stay in the league, right? You could be an All-Big the Drum participant a couple years at different schools with a gap year there, maybe backpacking around Europe. No, but that being said, looking at this offense, and again, going back to our conversation with Will Stein, which if you guys haven't heard that, I think it's great that Connor kind of cooked there, right? And so one of the things that we talked about was about his philosophy about feeding the studs. And I look up and down this roster, and there's some guys that are proven to a degree, right? But I think that when you look at what this offense can do well immediately, if Baxter can be healthy, you're looking at some guys that are okay, like Nick Anderson's your receiver. That's kind of the big name that's coming in. I had a lot of expectations for him, still not out on him or anything. But having the quarterback, I believe it's Kenny Minchie, that was pronounced.
Yeah.
Like he just doesn't have a ton of experience, right? So when you're in that situation where you prioritize the offensive line, you spent there, and you have a quarterback who is a new face, doesn't have a ton of reps under his belt, all that different stuff. It's just a lot easier to hand the ball off to a guy like Baxter, who again is massive, is going to be one of those guys that's probably your weight room star, practice star. So especially early in the year, I would expect them to kind of ride him and see how much he has left.
How else would Kenny Minchie be pronounced, I wonder?
Brother, looking at some of the names on this list, I don't know.
Minche. Kenny Minche. What if we just started referring to him as Kenny Minche? And just, if you're in on the joke, you're in on the joke. If not, don't correct us on our pronunciation. Kenny Minche.
Little Minche. I'm with it, bro. Let's do it.
All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, LSU will. Landon Clark. You knew it was coming. A slight rule bend here. I have in the past said no quarterbacks for reasons I already mentioned, just not necessarily to hype up a QB1 in the SEC, especially now. Like a lot of these guys are already millionaires. QB2 is not a millionaire. He is technically in the fight for QB2. Husan Longstreet. Am I butchering the pronunciation? Probably.
I think that's right.
We'll get that right when you're a starter. We'll get that squared away. Don't worry. But Landon Clark, buy stock now. The FCS transfer from Elon. He was the first quarterback transfer that Lane signed out of the portal. And I don't think that was an accident. Obviously, Sam Levitt was signed a day later. They had already been recruiting him. They were already very much in the market for a quarterback. So I'm not saying like he was the first guy they targeted, but like we know that there was clearly a feeling on that LSU staff of we can build a game plan around this guy. I'm not going to say that he is the love child of Trinidad Chambliss and Diego Pavia. Can't say that after a guy played 1 year.
Feels like you just did.
I'm not going to say that. Here's what I would say if I were. No, watch this guy. Watch this guy. The way that he moves, the way that he throws on the run, he can work in this offense. I really think that. As a redshirt freshman last year, he had 18 passing touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns, nearly 3,000 scrimmage yards. Needs to be better about taking negative plays. I think he took like 35 sacks last year. Still very much a work in progress, throwing under pressure. That is very different than his love father, potentially, Trinidad Chambliss. I don't know how to say that right. Did I just get canceled? I don't know. So then what's the comp? Like, why is he here? Is it just because we're talking about a small school guy who could maybe rise from QB2 to QB1 and have a lot of success in this offense? Yeah, that's part of it. But Sam Levitt, coming off of the Liz Frank injury that sidelined him all throughout spring camp, I don't think it's a given that we all of a sudden see Sam Levitt ascend. Okay. And I think that's certainly possible. I would not bet the farm on it. I think there are real things that he's going to have to figure out. He's going to be able to probably test that ankle injury and what that looks like. And there's a chance that, like with DJ Lagway late in 2024, maybe limited mobility is actually kind of good for him. And he figures some things out in the pocket, being able to work through his progressions quicker, knowing that he can't default to his legs and play a little bit of the YOLO ball that he loves to be able to play. But just keep in mind that in the event that Sam Levitt isn't at full go, or maybe he struggles with turnovers like a certain Austin Simmons did, QB2 and Lane Kiffin's offense has value. He does. He got plenty of reps with the ones this spring. We know that to be true. And at the very least, I expect Landon Clark to be the guy that comes into the game, maybe late in some blowouts, and all of a sudden LSU fans are buzzing. They're like, I want to see more of this. Give me more of the Landon Clark experience. Still kind of a raw player. Still want to see what it looks like with the speed of this level and all that. But I am certainly intrigued. And if Sam Levitt goes down, that would be a massive bummer. Don't get it twisted. Okay, I want him to return. I want the best version of Sam Levitt. But I'll be like, so Landon Clark time. Let's do it.
Yeah, I just love this guy. I love the comp there. I was like, I don't know where this train's going, but I'm on board. I'm ready to go. And
you're on board with love children.
Yeah, I'm so down. And so that being said, we talked about this guy a little bit after the transfer portal episode. I think I called him like caffeine-free diet Pavi or something. But that being said, I will give you the update to this. People of Louisiana having a very funny go of it right now because obviously the Saints just drafted Jordan Tyson. If you watch Jordan Tyson highlights, you start to have a lot of questions about Sam Levitt because you're like, wow, this guy Jordan Tyson's awesome. Who is that quarterback? He is taking these chances. He is getting his just head taken off on these plays. And so exactly your point, I think that rewiring a guy's brain like that is so what's the opposite of risk averse? Risk pro, loves risk. So
I don't want to say careless, but yes, there's risk. No, you're right. I just keep coming back to risk averse, risk immune.
Risk immune. Let's say that the two quarterbacks at the top of the transfer portal, one of them loved gambling on the field, and that was Sam Levitt, right? And so that being said, I just think he's the type of guy who his game is that. We've talked about guys like that. He could be another Four Loko quarterback, but I don't think his body is physically what some of those guys are at this point in his career. So if he fully changes his game, I'm all the way in on Levitt, but I don't think he's going to lose that wild streak that made him great in the first place and that brought them to, a near college football quarterfinal win in the Peach Bowl at Arizona State. And that was without Tyson too. And so that being said, right, I think that Clark gives you that stabilization factor. I think Kiffin was not really given a ton of credit for managing that quarterback situation the way he did in the early part of the season. Yeah, there were big games down the stretch. We're talking about the Georgia game, and obviously the playoff, right? But how quickly that season could have just unraveled with the way that Austin Simmons was playing and the way that they managed it with Chambliss, with the injury and everything. So I think that having that stabilizing presence is such a big deal. I think that Longstreet is a guy that is probably kind of a stash, NBA draft and stash guy that you can kind of wait on the next couple of years. But like I said, that's why I love Clark at the time is I don't think he views himself as QB3. I don't think he views himself as QB2. I think he views himself as the guy that's going to get in there and win that job. And I think that's kind of awesome for where LSU's at, where they need to win now.
Sub 6 foot quarterback with a full tattoo sleeve. Those guys usually got a little something to them. They got something to them. And I am intrigued. Definitely hope we see a good amount of Landon Clark this season.
He's not worried about the LinkedIn part of his career. He's worried about the here and now.
I don't believe he's kind of got, does he have, he's definitely got like the fade. Does he have the earring too? He might.
I think so. I think I've seen pictures of him with earring. That's the dude right there.
Yeah, he's gonna get some Diego Pavia comps if he's playing significant minutes for LSU this year. All right, Mississippi State. Isaac Smith, the defensive back. We're a little bit borderline here. I admit that, okay? Because last year, Isaac Smith got some late third-team All-American love, even though he wasn't an All-SEC guy last year. He technically was an All-SEC guy 2 years ago when he led the conference in tackles, but he's a dying breed, and he's a guy that I wanted to talk about because this is someone who is in year 4 in Starkville. He was recruited to play in Zach Garnett's defense out of high school. Isn't that crazy? Right?
And look at him now. Like Josh McDaniels, he's in Zach Arnett's defense again.
Full circle. And I bet that played a huge role in him wanting to stay. And like that's something where if you are in that spot where Isaac Smith, I think, had some options. You talk about those guys that are draft eligible, could probably play elsewhere, something like that. And it matters who you bring in. I don't know how much of a factor that was to be able to bring Zach Garnett as the DC, a move that was very atypical from Jeff Lebby too, considering that was his predecessor. But nonetheless, it probably had a say in getting someone like Isaac Smith to want to run it back in Starkville for year 4. The difference, though, is that technically this is the first time Zach Garnett will be working with Isaac Smith when he's the defensive coordinator and not the head coach. So that part's a little bit different. They're basically going to put him anywhere in the 3-3-5 with the exception of like nose tackle and outside corner. He's going to play all over the place. And he's one of these guys that you just always have to account for. Kind of a similar build to Harold Perkins and kind of would be really no, we're not going down that road. You need a guy like Smith leading your defense, especially if you're one that's got holes to fill up front. I still think Mississippi State will have holes to fill up front. He gets downhill. He doesn't care who you are. He will blow you up in space. Also took huge steps in coverage last year. 26.8 quarterback rating when targeted. If you spike the football every time, quarterback rating, 39.6. Okay? Look, that's good. That's really, really good. Him being banged up the last month of the season really hurt them. He's healthy now. I don't think he's quite going to be a first-team All-SEC guy going into the season. I'm acknowledging here he might be getting some preseason All-SEC love. Maybe he's going to be like a second-team, third-team guy. But I just think he could end up being one of the most dependable players in the ICC if he stays healthy. And if you've watched this team over the course of the last few years, you know that Isaac Smith is definitely worthy of being in this discussion.
Yeah, this is actually such an interesting ad because this is a guy who just walked out of a portal from like 2010, right? He's like from Mississippi. This is like the kind of guys that used to come through Mississippi State back in the day where it's like you got a little Darius Slay, you got a little like Smoot, little like random guys that you're like, oh, this guy's just a guy that stayed, guy that like, and again, you look at all the other guys with the 8 transfers, the wild names, like this is just a guy that your granddad would love to watch play. You know, he's a DB that I think you can play anywhere. He's a bigger guy, probably a little bit over 6 foot, measured at 220, they're saying here. So yeah, I think that like, you know, at a Mississippi State team that is a bit in flux, it does make a lot of sense that he decided to kind of finish this one out. So obviously got a bright future ahead of him and go, why would I move? I've been in Mississippi this whole time. I committed to this defensive coordinator. My stock is super high. And I love that for him. So yeah, that's definitely a reason to bang the drum.
What if that group is just drastically better? Will you get on this podcast every single Sunday and talk about your love of the 3-3-5?
God, I love the 3-3-5. I love it so much. that so much has changed since we talked about that. There wasn't even a concept of NCAA football coming back, but that was my defense in that game. Still works in the game. Not sure if it worked for Arnett, but yeah, I just think that like in that system, you do have the ability to have a little bit more positional flexibility, which LSU did not have in their kind of 4-3 front. So yeah, I think they could actually kind of use him effectively.
Yeah, they're transitioning back to that scheme. When they were at their best, it was when they were able to have third-year guys in that defense that were just loaded on the two deep, and that's when you saw the best version of that defense back in 2022 when Zach Arnett was in his last year as defensive coordinator before taking over for Mike Leach. So, yeah, Isaac Smith gives them a better chance to be able to get back to that the success that the 2022 defense had.
Sorry, I skipped 2 steps. And when I said there, you compared him to Harold Perkins. I was like, how is he different? I think that defensive scheme works better for a player like that. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I was saying I wish Harold Perkins was kind of used in that sort of way, just like line him up all over the place, let him rush the passer at certain points, and just kind of worry about don't necessarily concern yourself with what the NFL is going to think of him. Just put him in the best spots as possible because he's 220 pounds and can do a lot of different things for you. All right, Mizzou. Will, you're gonna have a tough time pronouncing this. I know it. So you don't have to. That's fine. Donovan Olugbade. Donovan Olugbade.
Okay, you know what? It actually isn't that bad. It's the pronunciation next to it that I grouped in with it. I thought that was all one name. Olugbade is not that bad.
Yeah. Originally thought about Caden Lee for this spot. And then I remembered I think I had him here last year. I do love me some Caden Lee. I love that he and Austin Simmons ran it back together. They're going to be doing this thing once again at Mizzou after I had really high expectations of both of them last year at Ole Miss. And it's not that Caden Lee was a bad player. It took a little bit, I think, after that transition to Trinidad Chambliss. But nonetheless, let's talk Olugbade. I think instead of saying Olugbade, we should just say, oh, look, a free play. It sounds basically the same. Does
Love
it not?
that.
Oh, look, a free play. Did you say Olugbade? Oh, look, a free play. That's where he's dangerous. That's where he's really, really dangerous. Just throw it into traffic and let him go make a play. As we learned from Austin Simmons, he is definitely not afraid to throw into some traffic. Maybe he needs to be a little bit more afraid to throw into some traffic this year. What was risk averse, risk immune? Whichever one, be more risk averse, Austin Simmons. That's what you need to be this year, maybe. My takeaway is that
he's risk ambivalent. He doesn't care about risk. It's all the same to him.
Risk ambivalent. That's a mouthful too. I don't know if I can say that. My takeaway is that if we're going to see the best version of Austin Simmons at Mizzou this year, he needs that contested catch guy on the outside. Olugbade, as a true freshman, had 6 contested catches, playing roughly 86% of his snaps on the outside. Just for a little perspective on that, because that's the type of thing they'd be like, hey, okay, he did it for a Mizzou team that won 8 games. Congratulations. That is no joke. Freshman George Pickens, the aforementioned George Pickens, had 5 contested catches on 7 more contested catch targets than Olugbade. Okay? We all agree. Freshman George Pickens was pretty fun to watch. Big time contested catches. Yeah, Olugbade had more contested catches than he did. Cam Coleman only had 3 contested catches as a true freshman. All right. And 13 last year. Cam Coleman, contested catch machine. And you'd say, hey, Connor, Cam Coleman had a bad quarterback situation his freshman year. That's not fair. And you should also say, who was Olugbade catching passes from last year? Because last I checked, it was the third string quarterback. It was Matt Zollers. No disrespect. Some disrespect, a little bit.
We had to watch it. We're all co-victims here. I think we could be a little disrespectful.
The people need to remember that in Mizzou's final 5 games, they completed 13 passes once. Okay? And the one time that they did complete 13 passes, it was in the game against Oklahoma where they didn't score a touchdown. Okay? We sat through the Mizzou passing offense last year. It was bad. It was really, really bad. As much as Mizzou needed to be able to change the offense to try and avoid nonstop loaded boxes for Ahmad Hardy, who, God willing, hopefully will be able to play this year, they also needed to change the offense so that a promising young receiver like Olugbade would stick around. This was a top 100 recruit who spent 3 years at IMG. He could have easily had a big market elsewhere. I guarantee you that people were tampering trying to get this guy. There is no doubt in my mind that there were some big time players that were like, hey, you could really thrive on the outside. Maybe, you'd be a 1 or a 2 in our offense and we could really maximize your abilities. Instead, he stays at Mizzou and he should become the only read for Austin Simmons when he has a free play.
Connor, what do you know about Montini Catholic High School?
Powerhouse. Recruits private. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like is this the Chicago area?
Yes.
Okay, so I know they're like it says Lombard here. I'm just like fascinated by this guy because yeah, you talked about 3 years at IMG. Looks like he's from Chicago. This is the exact type of guy that you end up like that can kind of get you back on the boat with because he can kind of hit on like this type. I say, oh wow, this is a really like exciting player. And yeah, I mean, again, bigger wide receiver, guy that's already been productive as a freshman. I love this pick here. It's a guy that's shown success in a bad situation, like you talked about. Now he's in a better situation. Obviously, we love Kid and Lee, but if this is your 1 and 2 in the SEC, I mean, you're up there in kind of the top echelon of 1-2 punches, assuming your quarterback is throwing it to them and not the other team. Again, everyone knows that connection, so I love you kind of going off the board here and saying, hey, if especially again early season, people are saying these guys are buddies, they're Thunder buddies. Let's just blanket Kid and Lee. Do not leave this guy open because he's scary.
Or guard him and watch him make a contested catch. The catch that he made against Kansas on 4th down was like, I said in real time, like, no way. Like there's no way he actually caught that in traffic. I think it's probably Bo Perbula's one of his best throws that he made all of last year into traffic, a layered throw, guy coming over the top. He was double covered and he makes a one-handed grab while he's tiptoeing on the sideline on the right side. I was like, who is that? Who was that? That was a grab. Unbelievable play. And again, just really, really good being able to line up on the outside and go up and make a play. And I think with better offensive minds that are there, and that's not a disrespectful to Kirby Moore. That's not what I meant to say. With some really good offensive minds on board with Garrett Riley, with Chip Lindsey, and with Drink, I think they're still going to be able to put him in some favorable spots, and he's still going to be able to get some sort of separation in that offense. All right. Another transfer receiver. Oklahoma, Trell Harris. Yes, the Virginia transfer. I've kind of, I don't want to say, I've accepted the reality that in this day and age, transfer receivers are just going to probably have the most production in the SEC. And it's been very evident these last 2 years. Last year, the 7 leading receivers in the SEC transfers. Top 5 leading receivers in the SEC in 2024, former transfers. It is the new way of the world. And you want to have veteran guys who have a defined college skill set, even better if it's coming against power conference competition, that you can just plug into an offense and say, here's what you do well, let's go. Trell Harris is that guy for Oklahoma. Isaiah Satania is too good to be on this list, okay? But Harris is going to be a really nice compliment to him and what John Mateer likes to do. Last year at Virginia, 8 contested catches, 363 yak yards. Only 13 power conference receivers had both of those totals last year. Only 2 drops on 82 targets. He's going to operate in the short middle of the field as well, but also at 8 catches on passes that traveled 20 yards. A versatile guy, a really versatile guy that can be a glue guy in that offense in ways that they kind of lacked last year. He's not going to be the home run hitter that Satania is going to be. He doesn't have to worry about that. I think Parker Livingston is going to have a lot of eyeballs on him coming over from Texas. Very well documented transfer, crossing enemy lines the way that he did. They have to stay healthy this fall. They were not healthy this spring, but I think Harris is a huge key to this Oklahoma passing offense taking another step. They took a step last year, and you saw flashes of it when John Mateer was healthy. They need to take another step this year if they're going to be true contenders in the SEC.
Yeah, that's the thing is that, this team has just been kind of snake bitten since joining the SEC. I'm not going to make a joke about, the physicality of the SEC, but it's like every time we've gotten excited about a guy, he's just kind of gotten hurt. Outside of Satania, you just talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And it's like even Mateer last year, right? So we haven't really seen this offense in full force. We saw it a little bit the first part of last year, against Michigan, whatever. But that being said, this is one where I start to have a little bit of questions of, okay, having a 1-2 punch is good if you can spread the ball around. Can we see that out of Mateer? If we're going to be able to tell, I think early with Mateer, I think it's either going to be, I think it's either going to be, hey, you're healthy now and you're just never really what we thought you were, or you're healthy now and we were right about you at the first part of the year where you were kind of in the Heisman conversation. I know he was like a Heisman favorite for a little minute, but it feels weird to say just because that was his year played out. I almost feel like that's going to be used against him. But at least I'd say a top half quarterback in the SEC for Mateer. And if that's the case, then again, like Satania is a go up and get it guy. So there is some ability there. But there's just so much to know about the Oklahoma offense,
Yeah, and I do think that if you're seeing different receivers take over a game, that's a really good sign. That's what they need to have this year. And I'd like to see John Mateer not have to have 15 to 20 rushing attempts in a given game. It's the high volume point guard thing. If he's distributing and you're seeing this guy take over, and it's not just Satania. Like last year, Charles Harris had a game in which he had like 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, like 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. I think it was in the first quarter against Stanford last year, where like this dude just took over a game. And that's a good thing to be able to have. And if you have the wrong matchups against him, he can absolutely expose those matchups. So they needed to add some depth at receiver. And I think they were able to do that this offseason with being able to spend on that. Like as much as Brent Venables is this defensive minded guy who is perfectly okay winning a game 21-17, you still need more firepower. And you still need to understand like, hey, this is going to be the last year with John Mateer. Like you need to be able to make sure that this is an offense that's got a little bit more versatility than what we saw down the stretch.
I'm actually so glad you went there. I felt like it was a tangent if I had started there, but you're so right, which is that the run game is the key here, right? If they can get a consistent run game, then they'll be able to throw the football. But without that, there's just not enough ability for Mateer to take a breath, do his progressions. If they're also expecting him to be the Russell Westbrook of this offense, as an Oklahoma reference.
Yeah. All right, Ole Miss. Luke Farrelly, the linebacker, the man who was good enough for Dabo Swinney to recruit out of the portal, but then also good enough to get Dabo Swinney to cry foul after Pete Golding may or may not have definitely did tamper with to be able to get. He is 100% good enough to be on this list. He is. And I kind of debated whether or not he was too good to be on this list, but he is kind of one of those guys who like, oh, until we see it in the SEC, there's a little bit of that skepticism. The ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, having multiple coaches tamper to try and get him. Yeah, Dabo definitely tampered to try and get him. Why wouldn't he? I'm sure that guy just always blindly enters the portal after having that much success. Oh, he's searching for playing time. No, he's not. This guy was a redshirt freshman last year who had 91 tackles, and in 2 of their wins last year had massive game-saving plays. Ole Miss lost TJ Daugherty to LSU late in the portal, and then Pete Golding goes, well, if I'm going to have someone steal my guy late in the cycle, I'm going to go steal somebody else's middle linebacker. And that's why Dabo was on the wrong end of that. Blame Lane Kiffin. He's going to get off blocks. He's going to make a bunch of tackles in space. Ole Miss had too many missed tackles last year. Farrelly's not going to fix that overnight, but there's a reason why programs like Clemson, like Ole Miss, wanted to make him a 7-figure guy, even though he technically could be a 1-year guy if he, obviously has a big year as a redshirt sophomore that he's listed as. He's going to plug holes. Those instincts are really good. He's going to make that defense better. I think he'll allow Centurion Perkins to be able to do what he does best. I probably don't need to bang the drum for Farrelly because a lot has been said and written about his school choices. Let's call him that. But I felt like I needed to remind people that this could be the most impactful defensive player on a playoff team, and it really wouldn't be that crazy.
Yeah, this is a guy that's kind of interesting. I don't really understand why he is as underrated as he is. He's huge as a linebacker. He's 6'3", 230. He played early, as you said. He's really productive. I think this might be a case of a guy kind of recruiting being wrong about him for whatever reason, or maybe he's playing at a smaller school, didn't go to the camps or whatever. Because even as a transfer, he wasn't that highly rated. And you see that there's 2 like very famous, very successful coaches fighting over him, and Pete Golding with a great defensive background saying like, no, this guy is the truth. And so in a way, I kind of feel bad for the kid that he's getting used as fodder for kind of the news cycle. And it is kind of unfair, some of the stuff that's happened to Pete Golding, where it feels like he's trying to, rub in his race in his way a little bit that every other coach does. And then it just kind of blows up in his face because people are deciding it's hate Pete Golding off season for whatever reason. But I love the pickup. I really do. And again, to have Lane Kiffin tamper with I've only said mean things about LSU today. If you have Pete Golding or to have Lane Kiffin kind of tamper with your guy and to replace him with this type of guy that late in the process, kind of whatever the price be, a guy that you're going to keep for a couple of years, hopefully, right? I think he's a red shirt in there too. So we'll see. But that being said,
year 3.
Yeah. So that being, you hope you only keep him for a year because he's that good. But the way that guys like that tend to go is that if they don't have that hype, it's harder for them to, pop in 1 year. But that being said, yeah, I think it's just an amazing acquisition. And Dabo be damned on that. I don't like him. And if he's mad about something, he's probably wrong.
Yeah. This is probably going to be a guy who he's going to get every Clemson fan screenshotting, taking video whenever he misses a tackle. And that's kind of what you sign up for. That's the nature of the beast. Breaking news, a middle linebacker will miss some tackles this year. It's probably going to happen. Okay. But I think he gives that Ole Miss defense, I think, a higher floor than what it could have been after those 2 late losses, losing Amon Miel and losing Daughtery. And I think being able to kind of shore up that unit with a guy like that, definitely significant for Pete Golding. All right, South Carolina. Matt Fuller, the running back. Jeff Collins told you on this very show, watch out for Matt Fuller this year. Flashed in limited reps behind a bad offensive line last year as a redshirt freshman. One of those flashes, Will, you probably remember, 72-yard touchdown at LSU, in which, went back and watched the replay of this, he was outrunning Mansour Delane, who ran a 4.38 40. Dude can jet. And that's someone that, as Tom Hart said on that very play, he has the nickname bowling ball. That guy's a bowling ball, they say. 220 pounds, capable of taking feature back work. They did add Christian Clark from Texas, but Fuller's the one that had the big sprain, that had a lot of buzz. Last year, he averaged 3.5 yards after first contact. Even if that offensive line is improved, even if they stay healthy, I think you're still going to want someone in that backfield who can break some tackles. Fuller can do that. Last year, South Carolina was such a bad fourth quarter team, really, really bad. Shane Beamer admitted as much and has talked about that a lot. How do you become a better fourth quarter team? It helps if you've got a running game that can wear people down, and not just with your quarterback doing that, but with other guys as well. In 2024, when that offense was humming, latter half of the season for South Carolina, we saw an explosive, dangerous version of Rocket Sanders, who became a really ideal weapon to be able to have for Lenora Sellers. And I don't know that Fuller is quite going to be at that level, but having already seen the Kendall Briles rushing attack have success in the SEC at Arkansas with Rocket Sanders, ironically enough, I will buy the notion that Fuller will be a dude to watch this year and could be one of those guys that very much off the radar of the preseason All SEC conversation, understandably so. The conference looks really, really good at running back, but could be one of those guys that you look up at season's end and is like, hey, he was a big part of South Carolina turning things around.
Yeah, I love this pick. To your point, he's a big guy that can burn. Sometimes the bigger guys are a little bit faster in pads because they're used to carrying around that extra weight, right? And so,
I love
like,
that theory. That's really good.
yeah, I mean, if you think
That's
about it,
really
like
good.
the guys that look awesome without pads on are usually the smaller guys. But then you're like, hey, if I'm carrying, 50 pounds of muscle or whatever, that extra whatever pounds of gear doesn't really affect me. I'm used to, carrying the rock. So this is a guy that can have that mix of being a bruiser, but also when he breaks one, getting him out in space and giving him those chances. And I think that South Carolina run game, that to your point, is kind of reminiscent of exactly what we just talked about with Oklahoma, where they couldn't really find their guy, and their quarterback, who's certainly a little bit more gifted as a rusher than John Mateer, I think we both say. But the best option just became Lenora Sellers figuring it out back there, and just didn't go well. So I think being able to take that pressure off him, keeping Sellers healthy, and also having a guy that you go, hey, you could break one, you could be a game changer, as you were kind of in that LSU game, like you talked about. I think it's awesome for them, and I don't think Beamer is going to strike out twice in the portal. I think he's a guy, or not the portal necessarily, but like just overall, with his roster comp, I think he's a guy who's been able to comprise some very cool rosters at South Carolina on limited budget with different resources. And I just don't think he's going to miss the way he did last year a second time.
Yeah, last year was weird with the Rasul Faison thing of the guy who was trying to get eligibility, and they didn't even know a week before the Virginia Tech game if he was going to be able to play. And the backfield just never really found a rhythm at
Right.
all. And maybe part of that was schematically from Mike Shula. We all know that played out the way that it did. Offensive line certainly didn't help them. But if they could just have a guy this year that they say, look, 15 to 20 times in a game, go get us big time first downs, and be this guy that can have that game breaking play, maybe not consistently, every single week, but every other game or something like that, just to take the pressure off Lenore Sellers. Find ways to take pressure off that guy. Anybody that can help do that, I'm in favor of. All right, Tennessee, Caden Lee, the corner coming
There's
over.
a Caden Lee to it here.
I know. Caden Lee is not Caden Lee. Two different dudes, both transferred within the SEC as well, as if that's not confusing enough. Lost in the shuffle of Auburn losing Cam Coleman and Deuce Knight on offense was the loss of Lee for Auburn. That was one that I think Auburn really hoped to be able to keep. And if you're wondering, like, hey, they kept TJ Durkin, why didn't they keep everyone on defense? They kept Xavier Atkins, who's going to be a really good player. Not always the case. Not always going to be the case. And sometimes, like, you just maybe don't meet that money offer, or maybe guys just looking for a new spot. Whatever the case, Caden Lee going to Tennessee is a big time addition for the Vols. I think that he's going to be one of the, if Tennessee's defense turns it around in year one or Jim Knowles, he's going to be a big part of that. Like, I don't think there's any debate about that whatsoever. This is someone who is going to try and solidify a new look group of defensive backs. Tennessee got someone who has over 1,500 career snaps at the SEC level, over 1,300 of those snaps at outside corner. And they're probably going to pair him with Ty Redmond, who got targeted last year as a freshman corner in the SEC 76 times, because why wouldn't you target the freshman corner in the SEC, who's probably not supposed to be starting, but we know that they dealt with a wrath of injuries in the secondary last year. They need Kane Lee to be a lockdown guy on the outside, and I think he can be just that. Last year, he allowed 21 catches for 252 yards. He wasn't at Mansour Delane levels of lockdown, because obviously, if he were, he would be in the NFL and he would probably be an early round pick. Still, though, Tennessee was bottom 25 against the pass last year. Some of that was coverage busts. Some of that was missed tackles in space. A lot of that was missed tackles in space. League gives Tennessee a chance to be able to improve in both of those areas, and a group that really committed to veteran power conference defensive backs kind of followed their strategy from what they did in 2024. The class that Jermod McCoy was a part of, a very new look secondary. And what worked that year was being able to say, hey, look, let's just get those experienced guys to shore up our secondary. It's going to help a lot. And it did. And I think they're kind of banking on that strategy working in 2026.
Connor, have you seen this gentleman's tattoo?
Oh, I have not.
Oh,
please share.
Oh my gosh. This is the entire skyline of a city that I could only assume to be Atlanta. I know he's from Georgia. It's kind of hard to see because it covers his entire chest. And obviously, we're not looking at shirtless pics on here. But in his look at this, Google this guy when you guys get a second. In his official Tennessee bio, he's just wearing a jersey, which is kind of a V cut. And you could see like 10 buildings on his chest. It is one of the craziest tattoos I've really ever seen in my life. And to be that young and that committed to just dog, I'm going to be famous. I love this guy. What a pull, man. What a pull. To your point, to get a younger guy who also has veteran experience. They talk about young vets, the buzz term or whatever. Love that to kind of rebuild that defense. Again, Jim Knowles is a guy, I will say, I've said it before, I'm just saying this so I don't contradict myself. Not really optimistic about them this year, but this is the type of thing that makes you think why we like Jim Knowles. He's a great evaluator and can see the guys that can grow into the system. And yeah, this dude just seems like a dog. A big Caden Lee stan from today on.
Kane Lee,
you're right. No, both of them, but the one without the D as well.
Kay Lee, huge fan. That's a great tattoo.
This is nuts. Guys, look it up. This is actually wow.
A lot of buildings shown with even the V-neck jersey on. No shirt underneath. Why would you wear a shirt underneath that? That'd be weird. I would not cover up that tattoo. I would assume it's Georgia. Can we get a Google search on Kay Lee tattoo, Will? Yeah, I would assume that's got to be Atlanta. Has to be. You live there. You should know this type of thing.
It's most of the skyline. I'm trying to see. Yeah, we'll circle back to it.
Okay. Texas. Michael Masunis, the tight end, coming over from Michigan State. He is not going to be high on any opposing scouting report in a given week. I'm not saying that. Obviously, you've got the likes of Cam Coleman and Ryan Wingo, if he can stop dropping passes, Raleek Brown coming over from Arizona State, Hollywood Smothers coming over from NC State, and maybe coming over from Bama too, depending on what you consider that to be. And oh, by the way, you've also got to account for Arch's legs with the +1 in the running game. And meanwhile, Sark has dialed up a look out of 12 personnel, wherein Masunis is just going to leak out into the flat, catch a pass, make a man miss in space, and suddenly you go, wait a minute, Gunnar Helm graduated. That guy's gone. He's been gone for this is the second year without Gunnar Helm, right? Like, that guy's not still in college anymore. He's not doing the Max Johnson thing. No, I think that's going to happen a lot this year with Masunis. And you're going to come back to something like this, wherein I mapped out that exact scenario, and you're like, why isn't Cam Coleman catching this big time pass? Or why isn't Raleek Brown catching this big time, making this big time play? I think that they basically said, we're recruiting you because we want to run 12 personnel. We want to be able to do that as much as possible and try and do as many things at the line of scrimmage to be able to make life easier on Arch. And I think that's a huge priority. Texas loves him as a blocker. That's not going to be in question. I think whatever they get out of him as a pass catcher is going to be considered gravy for them. He and Nick Townsend, who's going to be a sophomore this year, had a couple of nice moments in the bowl game. They're going to be slept on as a tight end duo, and kind of understandably so. But I just trust how they're going to be used in that offense. And I don't think that we're all of a sudden going to say that Masunis is putting up Gunnar Helm type production from 2024 or anything like that, or even Jack Endries last year, who came over in the spring window from Cal, didn't necessarily put up huge numbers, but was still an effective player at times. I think maybe he'll catch like 5-6 touchdowns this year. And if by midseason, the general takeaway watching Texas is, wow, Arch Manning has much better protection this year, and the offensive line is getting a lot of credit. Don't discount what it means to be able to have Masunis blocking for Arch as well. Really good in pass pro. It just kind of gives that Texas offense a little bit more versatility. And I think he's going to be part of a new look group this year.
Yes, I think this is just a scheme fit. To your point, we've seen how impactful that position has been in this offense. I'm sorry, Connor, I gotta go back to this tattoo. Look at what it's so much wilder than I thought it was, dude. We have every Atlanta sports logo in this. I had to go to his Instagram, which is why I was kind of bumping around here. We have a Hawks logo, a Falcons logo. This looks to be a high school logo that resembles Tennessee. There's a football on here. This is one of the most insane yeah, there's the Georgia Dome or the State Farm Arena right there. That's what I was missing, was the State Farm Arena. Oh my God, this is one of the coolest tattoos I've ever seen. This guy's a baller. I can't pick against K and Lee.
Is that, wait a minute, look at bottom right of this tattoo. This is bad podcast. Talking about a tattoo.
Please look up K and Lee's tattoo. This is crazy, y'all.
It's probably his high school in the bottom right.
Yeah,
kind of by his waist. That's not Kennesaw State, is it?
No, that's like 4 assorted high school logos here. We have what appears to be Juanita here over his belly button. Look up, you gotta go to his Instagram. You know, we're looking up shirtless pictures of college athletes is what we're supposed to do here. But I had to really see it because, oh my God, this is thousands of dollars of tattoo work. Jim Tressler is somewhere screaming.
What are you guys doing, May? Well,
tattoo evaluations.
The Atlanta skyline picture goes from shoulder to shoulder all the way across. Like, it goes into his shoulder. I mean, that is some work there. That's a lot of ink. You're right. Jim Tressel would never. Maybe he would. Yeah. What were we talking about again? Oh yeah, Masunis, Texas offense. Texas offense improved. Maybe not one of the top 3 or 4 offenses in college football, but these are the little things that Steve Sarkisian prioritizes. These are the little things that can matter, that we'll look up and just go, oh, they are a better group. And it won't necessarily just be because of the splashy additions. All right, well, Texas A&M. TJ Searcy, the defensive end. If you've learned anything so far trying to evaluate these fluid rosters, and yes, I know they are fluid, even places that emphasize recruiting at the high school level, there's still a lot of new names to be able to sort out. Trust when smart coaches recruit a guy at a position where they've already had a lot of success. Mike Elko, recruiting on the defensive line. Yeah, I'm buying that. He recruited Searcy from Florida after the 2024 season when they had to replace the likes of Stewart and Turner and Scorton, and all those guys were gone from the defensive line. And yes, last year, I understand that Searcy was very much overshadowed by Cassius Howell, who just, oh, by the way, casually became the SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't get overshadowed by Cassius Howell, honestly.
Yeah, who wouldn't get overshadowed by the guy that had 3 consecutive sacks in a football game? I mean, just an all-time, forever on his Wikipedia page type of accomplishment from Cassius Howell last year. Howell had the benefit of that extra year in the system when he broke out. He was kind of like the guy in waiting in 2024, and then in 2025, it all clicked for him. Year 2 was really when you saw everything come together for him. I think year 2 is going to be when everything comes together for Searcy as well. He is the leader of that group, especially now that Torian York is off to the NFL. Unfortunately, Torian York, undrafted, a little bit undersized. I get it. Love me some Torian York. Hope that he's able to stick in the NFL. I don't think he's explosive in the way that Cassius Howell is. So I'm not saying that. Like, he's not, I don't think he's going to turn into a double-digit sack guy. That's just not what he does. But he can give you a coverage sack. He can maybe take advantage of like a scrambling quarterback who wants to get to the outside. He's smart enough in those areas. And I just think he's a tone-setting player for what I assume will be one of the better SEC defenses again. And he's going to pair nicely with Anto Saka, another great name coming in the SEC, coming over from Northwestern. He is the better pass rusher, okay? But I just think that you're going to see this kind of breakout type season for Searcy. And he's going to be one of those guys that is just not fooled in the run game. And if you're going to be one of the better defenses in this league, yes, maybe it's a little bit 2011-ish to say this, but I still think you need to be able to defend the run. and have smart veteran players that know how to do just that. Maybe not always the TFL, but just the guy that maybe makes the assist to the TFL because he doesn't necessarily break contain. So I just think that Cersei's going to be a really valuable player, and you're going to hear Elko talking about him a lot this year.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that as an A&M fan, you can kind of hang your hat on. And that's like why we like Elko, and there's some of the stuff, okay, down the stretch, offensively, whatever. We could talk about how they struggled. It really was not on defense. I think that Elko has an identity. I think he's a great coach on that side of the ball. And for an A&M program that is kind of blown in the wind a little bit, you hire Jimbo Fisher to be this offensive guy and your offense isn't great, right? And then what do you have? I think that even with the little bit of a trail off the last 2 seasons with A&M, you as an A&M fan can be very excited about someone's going to be dirty in this front seven. We're not even really sure who it is, but this is a great pick to do it. You know what I'm saying? Whereas like that exact evaluation that you talked about, I think is so critical because it kind of goes to the Kirby Smart point earlier where I trust that evaluation almost more than anyone as a, guy who's been effective at all these different levels. And so, yeah, with losing all those guys and like York, I mean, he's such a cerebral player. I'm sure he will stick in the NFL. I have really loved York, man. And like, that's the thing, like the way that they just cycle these guys in and out, you're going to have an interior guy who's just a spacey. You're going to have an edge guy who's terrifying. You're going to have a smart linebacker. And it's just every year, who's it going to be? So I love this pick because it's one that barring injury, I think he's going to be a fun, good player that we're going to look up and go, oh, wow, we were on this guy early.
You're just always in a Mike Elko defense going to have 2 or 3 guys that are going to play at an all SEC level. I just kind of trust that at this point. And so it's not so much a blind pick because we're talking about somebody that's spent 3 years in the SEC already. So veteran, very much so. But I think Cersei's got a lot of potential this year to be just that force for A&M and maybe an A&M team that makes college football playoff. Again, I'm not allowed to say anything negatively about A&M. And I pretty much stuck to that, right? I haven't brought up, if I were to bring up something negative about A&M, it would be the turnover worthy plays of Marcel Reed. But I don't think I've brought that up that much, right? They've been good, all positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's complex, right? It's like that's what I've literally said after the last 2 years with A&M is like they had good seasons, but they set the bar so high early, and so it's complex.
All right, let's end with Vandy here. Cedric Alexander. If you search for highlights of Cedric Alexander, the top 2 results are either the long touchdown run that he had against Bama last year when he somehow only got 2 more carries the rest of the game, one of which was a touchdown. Look, I've sung the praises of one Tim Beck. I did not agree with that approach at all. I thought it kind of took away from what they were doing offensively, whatever. So that's the thing that you'll see. Or you'll see Cole just praising his pass pro reps. It's incredible. Cole has like 3 or 4 different cut-ups of him just annihilating a dude in pass pro. He allowed 1 single hurry on 77 pass pro snaps. Running backs who block that much often allow like 9 or 10 hurries, and they're kind of just like, man, just don't be a total doormat. Kind of know what your assignment is and hope that the worst thing doesn't happen. He is not that. Okay. And that is really important for what Vandy was trying to do last year, and not to go full Billy Napier here and tell you that the most important thing that a running back does is pass pro. But that is important because we're often talking about 3rd down and the pressure is coming and you need a running back to be able to hold up. And Cedric Alexander has done a really, really good job of that in his career. And I'm sure that has won him some bonus points among that coaching staff. He not only will hold up, but he will deliver that boom and probably make you think twice about the way that you want to rush the passer. He'll do that even on a day in which he might only be getting single-digit carries. And to me, that's what's pretty selfless to do, and you don't really see that a lot, and that's not the type of thing that gets praised or talked about, national shows or anything like that. So I understand that, but I just think that guy is very versatile, and he's a big part of whether or not Vandy is going to keep its head above water in the SEC this year. I really do. I think it's a great mindset for a guy to have because there obviously were plenty of games last year, the last 2 years, in which it was the Pavia show, and Pavia's getting all the attention, and they're showing his mom in the crowd every 2 seconds, and it's Pavia hitting the Heisman pose and doing this. And you're like, man, I'm the one that's like doing the dirty work here. And I'm the one that you give the ball to in goal line situations a lot as well. And people are still just praising Pavia. And, I just think that now that Pavia is gone, he is going to have a really valuable role in this offense. People expecting Jared Curtis to start. TBD on how his movie career is going to take off in the Nate Bargatze, yes, it's Bargatze, not Bargatze film, Breadwinner, which I'm totally going to see. Still a believer in Mandy Moore. don't know how I feel about Jared Curtis being in that movie, but nonetheless, he's going to be in a spot where people are going to want to tee off on him. And you need guys that are probably just in your corner unconditionally. You know what a 5-star true freshman quarterback in the SEC would love? A running back that cares about pass pro. I think that matters. I really do. And he's also going to be, I think, going to be given the rock a little bit more. MK Young, a former New Mexico State transfer, he's going to be kind of the complementary back in that backfield. But I just want to see what it looks like if Alexander can get 15 carries a game, because he packs a punch, man. He just really does. So good around the goal line. He does some of his best work on those passing downs. I know that the running back position looks so good in the SEC this year, and there's a lot of depth in ways there has not been in years past. But I think Alexander can be an all SEC type back. I think he can be a 1,000-yard back and maybe even score 15 touchdowns this year. I think that's all within the realm of possibility for what he's going to be asked to do in this offense.
You know, when I saw this name, I said, this guy is too good to be on this list. And as you talked, I'm so fascinated by this guy's profile because he's amazing. And he's been Vandy's leading rusher as a running back. Obviously, Pavia was their leading rusher for consecutive years. But this guy is, you know, they run that option look, right? Like the give guy has been him. And he's pretty clearly been their best running back the last 2 years. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy who goes from 164 carries in his sophomore year to 105 carries and increases his yards per carry by 2.
Yeah.
Like he almost rushed for the same amount of yards on 64 fewer carries. And I think that's just because Bobby has the ability to call his number a little bit more and just did it, you know, in this year. And it obviously worked out for him to a degree, right? But you got to start wondering, is this guy like a flat earther or something? Because he does pass pro. What is wrong with this guy? Like, this is like, every time I've seen him with the football, it's awesome. To your point about Alabama, they just stopped giving him the football, and suddenly the offense just kind of fell apart. And it was like, what are we doing here? Like, he was unstoppable in the first half of this game. So this is a guy that is, I'm not gonna say a household name quite, because I think Pavia, some of the other guys like on the offense kind of took away from that. But I'm exactly with you. It's like, hey, say what you will with Curtis, he's not going to tote the rock a billion times the way that Pavia did. And I think we're going to see Alexander in this feature role. And there's a guy that could have, you know, low mileage on his tires as far as his, you know, final year, as far as his NFL future. But he's a guy that I think has all the talent in the world. And yeah, when you bring up the pass pro thing, it's like, I'm sure he's out there for a ton of plays, just kind of doing stuff. But yeah, just what a team guy. And I'm so excited to watch him play. Great pull.
Yeah, I think this is the type of guy that Clark Lee wants to send out the right way too. I think seeing him kind of be a part of this turnaround and stay committed to the program, which again, like a lot of these guys could have had options and could have sought different situations, and deciding to come back to Vandy and be put in some spots that I think will feature his skill set a little bit more prominently. I think that is a noteworthy thing to highlight in this day and age. And I think Alexander could just end up being one of the best backs in the SEC, even though, again, when we fill out these all SEC ballots, you're going to be like getting to 8, 9, and he's not going to be there because he doesn't have this 1,000-yard season, double-digit rushing touchdowns last year, but doesn't necessarily have those gaudy numbers in the same sort of way.
That's really quick. I know we're running long here, but yeah, he led them in rushing touchdown. The more I read on this guy, the more I like him. He's a little bit smaller, 5'9", but 210. Probably has put on weight since that measurement was taken. Guy that played basketball and ran track in high school, so he has like some cross training there. I just feel like he's kind of again, he's been on the big stages, but there's a lot left there. Like the preseason probably won't be kind to him, just as you said, but this is going to be a riser.
Hurdles, literally a riser. Loves to hurdle too, and not in like a Jeremiah Love, I'm addicted to it sort of way.
You can't hurdle too much. It's hard to pull off.
Yeah, Jeremiah Love had to go to like hurdle rehab. He had to make a deal with himself. I need to stop doing this. This is too fun. I'm enjoying this too much. Like, man, you 3 yards and going out of bounds. You don't need to hurdle a guy. Cedric Alexander, more timely hurdles. No, we're not gonna say he had more timely hurdles than Jeremiah Love, but more responsible hurdle usage maybe than the guy that was just taken as the top 4 pick in the NFL draft. All right, that is the All Bang the Drum team. That was a lot of drum banging. We love to do it this time of year. Just dudes talking about dudes. Nothing wrong with that at all. Don't hate on me if I didn't give your guy enough love. Email us again.
Yeah.
At gmail.com. Please email us. Who should we be banging the drum for in 2026? All right, let's get to Matt Schick. wanted to have Matt on for a really long time. I was able to make that happen. We talked some Colorado, some Nebraska. Both of us have some very central Nebraska roots. We talked Big Ten, SEC dynamics, and more. So let's kick it to Matt. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is a first-time guest, in fact. It is ESPN's Matt Schick. Matt, you are also the first person that I've ever had on this show who made an unprompted reference to my former sports editor in Nebraska, the legend Buck Mahoney, a name that is just straight out of Central Casting. And like it is so I say it all the time, and like my co-host Will Ogburn will be like, his name was Buck Mahoney.
Yes.
Straight
out of a movie. He was the sports editor at the Kearney Hub. And when I worked in Kearney, Nebraska, you have the hub every day. It would show up. It was not digital. This was before digital operations were really a big thing. And read the Kearney Hub. What's going on? Oh, I got to check the American Legion baseball schedule here in June. Let's see who we're going to go out and get a game of tonight. So yeah, Buck was always, and Chris Basnet started there, and then he went to Lincoln Journal-Star for a little bit. So yeah, a bunch of popular names back in the day.
Our paths never crossed when we were in Kearney, but I need you to tell people that there's more than just cornfields in central Nebraska, because it gets a tough rap nationally.
It's true. However, I will say, when I interviewed for the job, and I was about to interview, they said, "Okay, here's the directions," because I was coming from Denver at the time.
Getting there is different, though. Yes,
it's true. You said, drive out, get off at the Kearney exit. You're going to see the sign that says Kearney left 1 mile. You go right for 13 miles or 10 miles, whatever it was. I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yes, you will see." And Mark Baumer was my news director at the time. He said, "You'll see cornfields upon cornfields. Just keep driving. Keep driving. You'll see the tower there in the distance. And we're at the base of that tower on the left." And I'm telling you, like, I look to the left, I'm like, that town's not very big. And I go to the right, and you see nothing but corn. And you just kept going. And you see that tower, but it's like seeing a giant building in the distance. You're not really getting any closer. But the town of Kearney, very nice. Some corn, some soybeans, but outside of that, very pleasant, and a great small town to cut your teeth in, and good bars and restaurants and places to have some fun.
That's a key distinction, because you're right, and I forgot that NTV where you worked is like in a total opposite direction.
Between Axtell and Minden, which are two of the smallest towns in the history of Western civilization. Yes.
It's just that when you drive everywhere else, that's where you get the small town America feel. Yes, definitely. Okay, so your wife is a Husker, correct? Like she went to Nebraska, or grew up a Nebraska fan?
She grew up a Nebraska fan. She grew up in Lincoln, went to Lincoln Southeast High School. Her grandparents had season tickets, so they got passed down. So she went to all of the home games. She went to St. Cloud State in Minnesota, but her family and her hub is still there in Lincoln. And so she's a huge, huge Husker fan. It doesn't matter the sport. Things get very volatile in the household during those events.
Okay, would she like a copy of my Iowa notepad with Matt Rule's buyout terms right there?
Wow.
You could put it on your fridge if you want.
Yeah. In other words, it's not happening. It's not ending. What's bigger, the buyout or the number of first downs you had in the first half? Like, yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. How troubling is it for you personally that the lone team that Rule beat, who has won 8 regular season games during his time in Nebraska, was 2024 Colorado?
Wow, that's quite a stat. And that was you go back to that in 2024, that was an emphatic win.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my wife was actually at that game. She brought we have this ritual that my father-in-law started, which is when a kid turns 10, we're going to ship him out with mom, and we'll go to a Husker home game. And Porter, my now 12-year-old, picked the Colorado game. And I said, "Hey, why don't you at least wear a Colorado shirt underneath so that if they win, you can take it." He never did, and it was never close. But they said that was the loudest game she'd ever been to. And I watched it at home with the other 3 Schicklets, as we call, and they were making fun of me the whole game. And I just said, "All right, this thing's over." I
think you got the last laugh, though. I do.
Maybe. I mean, I said over the last couple of years, I'm like, I think Colorado is is kind of where they're going to be. I think they reached their ceiling of what they can do with Deion. But there's no question that they have gotten their return on their investment. I'm not sure the same can be said for Nebraska.
Yeah, it's tricky because, and I talked about this when we did our worst contracts pod. I had Deion at number 10 on my list, not nearly as high as Matt Rule at number 2. But Deion cracks the list because it's like, hey, you're making 8 figures now, going 3-9. Like you can't do that. Like when you see the optics of it and you see the side by side of the spring game and stuff like that, do you squirm a bit when you see things like that, or you see like the guys that are coming out of the tunnel? I think Reddit College Football had it, and you see like how small those guys look. And you're like, it's been good at moments, but like, what's the future look like?
Yeah, I think the future is very unknown because you have the outgoing athletic director in Rick George. They've replaced him, who seems to be a stand-up guy, but the health concerns with Deion Sanders, like I think the Deion thing was going to be lightning in a bottle. I thought it would capture the momentum, and with Travis and with Shedeur and with that whole embodiment of entertainment culture, getting people excited about it. And then like anything, it's okay, now what are you going to do with it? And I wonder if that era, if they could have just not had the portal outside of Shedeur and them coming to the school, maybe you get more high school talent to come on board and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. But I think with his health issues, I'd be surprised if he's there more than one more season. But I go back to it. Colorado is just so irrelevant and a laughingstock. You go back to John Embry, you go back where they're just getting blown out. And if you would have said, hey, they're going to be in the running for the college football playoff at the end of Deion's second season, whatever, you said, all right, I'll take that. And they were. And so I think Colorado's in a tough spot simply because of the recruiting footprint. If you visit campus, you don't want to leave. It's just a matter of, can you get them on campus, and are you having enough NIL pull to convince them to stay?
I've talked to Mike McIntyre about this a few times too, and I've tried to explain how hard that job is. And I think because someone like, the late Bill McCartney had the success that he did there, where like I think people in my generation are still told, hey, you can win at Colorado. Like I know Nebraska fans who are like, hey, don't sleep on Colorado. Like they remember those times. I think the fact that Deion has checked a lot of those boxes and he's still capable of having that 3-9 season, I think it kind of proves all of that in a weird sort of way.
I think one of the tough things that happened to Colorado, there are two things. One is the conference realignment and then back again. Nebraska is experiencing that. Nebraska lost their foothold in Texas. They're not as successful as they were when they were in the Big 12. And then you get caught up in the portal, NIL, coaching changes, and now where are you? And the other thing was, think about where this program, what they might have accomplished with Mel Tucker at the helm. I don't know, and we'll never know. But he left after 1 year, and there was some momentum there. And then you took 5 steps backward, hiring Carl Durrell, which I don't think anyone was on board with outside of those within the building saying, hey, this will make sense. He's been here before. This will work. It didn't. And I think you could see that coming. And so that's like a 4 to 5 year kind of wandering in the wilderness, joined with the back end of the McIntyre era, where you're just trying to find some stability. And then Deion provides that, but you don't have stability at quarterback now. And then your Heisman Trophy winner's gone. And so in this nomadic type of sport in college football, it's just so hard to find that S-word stability. And I don't know if they have it. And it's hard to keep that roster churn, especially at Colorado. And you can't build through the high school ranks either. So it's a tough job, but it's a beautiful place to lose games. I'll tell you that.
That's the best description ever. It's a beautiful place to probably not coming to a Coach Prime recruitment anytime soon. But so along those lines, what happens next? Nebraska beats a ranked opponent for the first time since 2016. Deion steps foot on a high school campus, or and here's the kicker: the SEC wins a national championship in football. Something I heard happens every once in a while, or at least it used to.
Or plays for one.
Yeah, true.
Plays for one could be another one. I think I always go by it's going to happen because it has to happen. Like Nebraska is at this, I feel like they're at this crossroads every single year of, if not now, when are you going to push through? Can you get over that hump? And every time they're on the precipice of, here's a big game coming up, they fall flat. Whether it was Michigan last year or Indiana the year before, where you get blitzed 56-7 with a new head coach. Like, what is going on? So, you look at their schedule this year. If they don't get that done this year, I don't know that they're going to a bowl game.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the world where I go, if you look at their schedule and what they've got, they need to start 5-0, and then they might need to pick off a ranked team or two just to become bowl eligible or to have a winning record. And it's hard to imagine Matt Rule this deep into it, not figuring it out. But like you said, if what you say is true and it's the second worst contract out there, it's there for a reason.
I had heard that the Nebraska-Indiana game was kind of a turning point within that building at Nebraska, and that it hit Rule in a really significant way of being like, wait a minute, they have a year one coach at that place where they are not exactly flush with cash the way that Nebraska has been for a really long time. And to see that happen in that area was like, all of a sudden you're doubting your own abilities in ways that I don't know that he's ever had to. Like, that game could have been like a real turning point. And I'm going to wonder about that. Like, if he never quite gets over the hump and they're never even capable of having that like 9-3 season, I'll look back on that point and I'll swear, based on everything that I've heard, that was like a critical juncture for him.
I would agree with that. I would say there were two that season. I think the more critical one, I think you're right in the outcome, because getting blitzed and bombed like they were against Indiana, no one saw that coming. No one saw Indiana going 11-1 that season either. So maybe you can couch it with, that's just a really good team and no one really knew what to expect. But that overtime loss to Illinois earlier in the season, I think that was in some ways a turning point on the negative side for Dylan Raiola. I think that was a quarterback that, if a halfback or whoever it was, tight end, caught a ball in the end zone in that game, they pull away from Illinois and win that game. Instead, it goes to overtime, and he takes a 20-plus yard sack, and the air is out of the balloon. And in that moment, then Brett Bielema going across the field, and here come the Illini, and you just saw two programs kind of go like that, crisscross applesauce. And it was not, I think it was a harbinger of some things to come. And then the next year, last year, they got Michigan in town, and they got a lead at the half, or maybe it was a close game, whatever it was. And then in the second half, you just lay an egg. You just look like you're not even close to it. And Bryce Underwood, rookie quarterback, what are we doing? You got Dylan Raiola here in year two. This should be taking another step. And then you have USC at home, and you've got a multiple score lead, and your quarterback gets hurt. And then you lose 4 or 5 or whatever the number is. So there are a few things, and then getting blitzed in the fourth quarter against Minnesota on the road. Like, there are some inexcusable outcomes. There are some unavoidable injuries that have happened, but they've got to figure this thing out. And I just don't know, in this day and age of college football, for every Fernando Mendoza, there's a dozen quarterbacks in the transfer portal that don't work out. I mean, look at what just happened to Brendan Sorsby. It could be just for something that he did off the field. Like, we just didn't know this guy. You got to build from within, and you just don't have the patience to do that anymore. We'll see if Calandre works out, but if not, it might not work out for Rule at all.
There's so much irony right now in the Big Ten SEC debate. I know you talk about that a lot on Sirius. The exact thing that I think the Big Ten fans used to accuse the SEC of being like really top heavy in the 2010s. That's now flipped. And the Big Ten used to say that it had better depth. And I think the SEC could actually push back now and say that it has depth. But like, as SEC fans would tell you, winning titles is what matters. And Big Ten's winning titles. And that's why this conversation has changed. How do you see that dynamic in college football right now?
Well, I think the conversation of talent, like who has the most talent, it's hard to go away from the SEC because they have the most draft picks, and it's not terribly close. When you have a player drafted on every team in your conference, that is significant. But I think when the losingest program in college football history and the worst team in your conference wins a national championship, it changes everything of how you view it. And the bottom of the Big Ten, you look at it, it's Michigan State, Penn State. Like, you got a couple of those programs that are not used to being at the bottom. And those are teams at the bottom. So it's also about not the number of teams, but who's there. And the Big Ten is waving this flag with Penn State laying an egg last year. So I do wonder what that looks like moving forward. I think for the SEC, I am curious to see how the narrative changes with, even in the offseason, you hear national reporters saying, hey, this team beat a pretty good South Carolina team. Pretty good South Carolina team? What are you talking about? Like, they won one conference game. Hey, it's a tough place to play. Look what happened. Texas won in overtime at Kentucky. Should they be going to overtime on the road against Kentucky? Like, there are things like that where I just, the number of ranked teams, the number of tough wins. I heard Kirby Smart earlier in the week talking about the grind of the SEC, and I don't discount that at all. Like, they're selling these places out. It's tough. You're going up against more NFL talent every single week. At the same time, you're playing 8 conference games, and you have 3 built-in bye weeks, 2 in the season and 1 in November. So the SEC is going to have to make a decision here now that they're going to 9 conference games. What does that look like now when you're handing half the league an extra loss? And furthermore, what do you do with that November game? Do you start your conference season earlier, or do you get rid of that November game? And then we'll really have a serious conversation about the grind of the Southeastern Conference when, yesterday's 10-2 is now today's 8-4. And that's where I'm curious to see where the conversation begins.
What's your favorite signing day moment from your ESPNU years where that thing, National Signing Day, was just, it was everything? And like, one of the reasons that you left Nebraska to be able to do this was to be part of that circus and that phenomenon.
So I came in just a year or two after the Landon Collins thing happened. Might have been the following year, or maybe I was there that year, but I wasn't covering signing day, and Dari Noko was there. And I wondered, what would you do in a situation like that? Like, that wasn't necessarily uncomfortable as much as it was really good TV. I had one in, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 years ago. It was Jacob Copeland with Florida. And he picked Florida at the table, and the school's behind him and everyone's going nuts. And then you see a woman walking in front of him and leaving in front of the camera. And I am trained to watch everything in the screen, and my face is not on the screen. So I'm looking intently as I'm talking to him, and it's just Jacob. And then I see this lady get up, and I almost start to snicker a little bit, but then I get serious. I go, Jake, and Jacob's not looking at her. And I say, Jacob, who was that left? And he says, he has his head down. He goes, that was my mom. And it changes everything. And I go, why did she leave? And I don't know. I can't recall what his answer was. But long story short, that was, and she had an Alabama sweater on. Okay. And this is before NIL was above board. So you can only imagine what's going through my head and all the questions I want to ask, but can't. And we got it, we're talking about it on the set, whatever. That clip is aired on Good Morning America the next day and all of this. And then you see online, I'm getting pushback. How could he ask these questions? Like, okay,
have to.
It's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
So that would be probably the most awkward one. My favorite one, though, which picked up steam because it was a positive side, was when Emmitt Smith's son committed to Stanford, and he's there at the desk with him. Both parents are there. And I asked him, hey, Florida was one of the schools. He didn't pick your alma mater. What's your reaction to that, and what's been your message to him throughout this? And he gave a great minute-long thing, which I think anybody, whether you played for a school or not, or a Division I athlete or not, or played in the NFL or not, could use as this is his journey, not mine.
Yeah.
And that turned into a really good, poignant aspect of signing day. So I've seen both, and some of them are weird. Some of them are uncomfortable. Jabril Peppers once. I had his commitment, and he did this rap, and I didn't know what he was doing. Like he's like, and then he puts on the helmet, and there's no eyes behind him. I'm like, hey, at the end, like, what am I supposed to do? Applaud this rap that you just did? So there have been some really good ones.
An idea that I have pitched to our fellow Central Nebraska journalism alum, and like you mentioned, Dari Noka, who's witnessed many a signing day and Landon Collins. I would love you guys leading a portal day special across ESPN platforms. First day that the portal opens, hats on the table, agents at the table, because Lord knows they want, all the pub and everything. And the upside is that, instead of making all these announcements before the portal even officially opens, you get the juice of being able to do it on this special. And that like appeals to the traditional college football fan. Like it would just be something that, if done right, could be so exciting and so good, and kind of bring back some of that, that signing day feel. Like, could we make this happen? It'd be great.
Well, look, signing day used to be an 11-hour ordeal. And I say ordeal because it was a long, long day. And then it turns into, hey, let's do 5 hours. Now let's do 3 hours. Now we're doing 1 hour. It's nothing. So the portal is where you're going to capture the casual fan, because these are actually household names, or names that have played in college. When we would cover high school events, they'd say, hey, make sure you pepper and let them know they're going to this school, that school, this school, LSU, Nebraska, whatever it is, because that's how you capture the fan. Well, what better way to do that than to do, hey, this guy played at this school and now he's playing at your school. I would love it. I think we should have a portal show. I would love hey, let's have the agents on the phone.
Yeah.
Even give us your top 5. Give us your top 5. Let's light the fuse on the portal period here, because this is when championships are going to be won or lost.
Luganville on the desk, he'd sign up for something like that. He'd be all in. And I say you and Dari because, like, obviously you guys are each point guards in your respective ways, but like, you're right, it's a long day. And if you do a 12-hour day, like, hey, 6 hours of you, 6 hours of Dari, something like that, it could work. I'm just saying.
I'm with it. No, I'm with it 100%. I don't know if the SEC network crew would allow him to come over to the bright side of regular ESPN, but I'd be all over it. He'd be great.
We can make it happen. Matt, you're the best. I'm sure we'll talk soon on your show on Sirius. And we'll do it again real soon, man.
Appreciate all the times you come on, and happy to do it anytime. Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, man. All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week, and then we got an email that I want to get to as well. Kick us off here.
Cool, man. So a little co-lad of the week from very different places. Shout out to our guy, David Bannister here in Hoover. I am obviously at the SEC tournament watching this LSU team finish the season however it does. We're recording this on Wednesday, so who's to say what's going to happen before you listen to it. But he was able to hook us up with some tickets out here at the Hoover Met. It's been a really nice experience coming back to my old stomping grounds here, being up, in a box, seeing some of my guys from high school. So shout out to them. Super cool experience this week. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is going to be, and I've gone all season without talking about this, my Warcraft guild, the Reign. We got our head of the curve last week, killed the last boss in a record time. Your boy was number 1 in DPS as an unholy death knight. Little work, slight work, some little calm first place. So yeah, I feel like a great group of guys. It's been genuinely fun to play this game. John completed his first raid in Warcraft ever, so shout out to him. Just been really cool to be around a group of guys. It's so fun to just it feels like you're gaming and you're like your kid again, versus like you got to remember all this stuff. So pretty involved game, but we make it fun. So that's my co-lads of the week.
I love how you say, I've not talked about this until now. Why, Will? Why are you holding back your World of Warcraft feeds?
I don't think the people care most of the time. I had to kind of do the mission accomplished, wrap it up. But yeah, the Reign on Dresden, great guild. Check it out, boys.
What's my comp to World of Warcraft that I could bring up that would be very niche?
Oh, man. Like in your life?
Yeah.
Oh man, I think you have like some of your like personal quirks. Like we've talked about the stuff we hit on, like the public stuff, Hawaiian rolls. We all have our little stuff. I think, I don't know if it's like a hobby you have. Maybe people love bowling. I think it's a little bit more, it's more common than Warcraft for sure. But yeah,
should I just start ripping my mile splits? Should I do that?
There you go. Yeah,
not good today. It was hot. Don't ask me. All right. Speaking of physical feats, Aaron Murray. This is incredible. Completed his first Ironman, half Ironman, whatever. I would still call it an Ironman. 5 hours, 44 minutes, wanted to beat 6 hours. That was his goal. He did it. If you follow him on social, he's been posting about his training progress, which I am legitimately interested. I watch all of Aaron's stuff. I think the nutrition element of it is fascinating as well. tons and tons of respect for him to do that in his mid-30s. All the reason in the world for that dude to just play golf, just kind of casually get out of shape. Dude has his name all over the SEC record books. Nobody's ever going to question his athletic abilities. All right. Like that's safe. If his kids are ever like, oh, daddy, like, are you good an athlete? He could see himself in HD. All right. Which that is no small feat. Okay. But he decides I want to challenge myself, and a 70.3 mile trek, which is what a half marathon breaks down to, is insane. For those who don't know the breakdown of this, 1.2 mile swim followed by a 56 mile bike, and then you end with a 13.1 mile run, which is a half marathon, obviously. Well, I think I keep in decent cross training shape. Again, I'm not sharing my mile splits on here, but like decent shape. The swimming would send my heart rate into the 180s. Open water swimming. Have you done that before? It is insane.
When I was a fat kid, I swam a lot. Funny enough, it feels pretty counter. I really loved Sonic, so like I was like a beluga whale out there. I was very speedy, but I was very large. And so back in the day, like coming up in Pensacola with my dad, I did a ton of open water swimming. I don't know how it's funny. Me as a fat, like 10-year-old could probably cook me right now as a little bit more fit grown man. Swimming is very hard to do.
Sonic is in the Hedgehog?
No, as in like the burger place. Like I was just crush tots.
I would just crush tots, so I had to swim.
I think I just have bad genetics. I do the old school. Both of my parents are a little bit older. I'd get out of the pool, get out of the sea, and just eat some Sonic. I would lose any weight.
Big fan of the Coney dogs. You're right, though. Swimming is hard. Lauren swam well in high school and probably could have done the small school swimming thing and decided, why would I want to do that? No, I'd rather just go to college. Very thankful that she did. But yeah, I think open water swimming for over a mile is crazy hard. And the thing that is so hard for me to fathom with doing the half marathon, or the half Ironman rather, is getting off the bike after riding for 56 miles. And again, we're late May. We're not talking about like cool temperatures here. You've got dead legs, and you know that you still have to run an entire half marathon. That mental hurdle would just be impossible, I think, for me to overcome. And I've only done one half marathon in my life. Like I've run in, races and 5Ks and 10Ks and stuff like that, but only one half marathon. I did it when I was 27. And it's so weird because I didn't feel gassed at the end of doing that. I just felt like my body ached, and it was full body soreness. As in, you've been doing this for a really long time. And you don't really do this for a really long time. It's not as if you're just winded and like, oh my God, I'm keeled over. Your body's just like, man, what are we doing? We just did this for 2.5 hours. Yes, that was my time. I know I just said I wouldn't share times here, but whatever. I did it with Lauren.
We all knew it was coming.
Yeah, you knew it was coming. I just can't imagine how much my body would ache doing that nearly a decade later, like Aaron did in his mid-30s. And it just takes incredible training to be able to do that. So much respect to him, and inspiration for all of us 30-something lads.
Can you text him, or Aaron, if you're listening, just email the show? Like, what do you think about for that amount of time? Because, like, as a gentleman with ADHD, that's really what would say. Because, like, I used to be an MMA fighter. Like, I've never been a chunk my whole life. There were some periods of athleticism in there. They were short. But, like, there are times where I've done some really wild athletic stuff in college and stuff. Like, I was 2-0 in MMA fights. But the cool thing about MMA is it's so high-paced. I was just like, don't die for, like, maybe 20 minutes tops when I was in the ring. And for that, I mean, it's hours. It's hours that you're just sitting there. So I would love to hear what's going through Aaron Murray's mind. You got to be kind of mad. I feel like you either got to be mad or you got to be calm. I think you'd be a calm guy. I think he might be a mad guy. I'd probably be a mad guy as well.
You got to find your pace doing something like that. And I imagine if you're listening to music, it can't just be heavy metal the entire time. That's 6 hours. That's a long time. And the training for it, that's the reason why people in their mid-30s don't do this, is because the training is a full family commitment. That's what doesn't get talked about enough. And Aaron posted, I remember he posted this on Mother's Day. He's like, I woke up this morning expecting to have an off day. And then, his wife Sharon says, hey, go crush your ride today. I'll stay at home with the kids. Like it takes support like that to be able to do these things. Or people that train for a marathon, man, like, what are you doing on Saturday? Oh, I'm running 18 miles. okay, so I'm just going to be on my own and I'm just going to be parenting for that entire time while you're on this 18-mile run, or you're going to do this at 4 in the morning and then you're going to do it from 4 to 9 a.m. That's all my Instagram feed is now. Oh my God. Dad's training early in the morning. And I know by me just saying that, I'm going to have so much more content on Instagram that is just dads who wake up early and try and motivate me to work out early. Guess what? My body feels like crap when I wake up at 7 a.m. and I don't want to work out at 7 a.m. I'm fine just working out at 9:30 or 10 in the morning. All right. Stop telling me I need to work out at 4 a.m. Anyway.
So you hit on something there that is interesting to me, though. This is maybe another question for Aaron. I mean, is it practical to put in earbuds while you're swimming? Do you put your phone? I mean, is there a level of waterproof of phone case that you can get where you're in the water for hours? You're not scared about that? I don't know, but that was part of it to me, where it's just like the water element, or it feels like you're just out there. Because I won't say I had fun open water swimming. I'll tell you I did it, but it wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to be out here. But anyway, good. Heck yeah for him, man.
Yeah, because you could do the AirPods are waterproof, like the watch is waterproof and all that stuff. But you're right, the phone's not. And you got to figure out, I mean, you're downloading probably something to your watch and figuring out that way and running Bluetooth through that. But yeah, man, real commitment to be able to do something like that. So yes, I will definitely have to text Aaron. What'd you do? What'd you do that whole time? Like, I know you're like focused on training and whatnot and everything like that, but what'd you listen to? That's a long period of time.
Did you just think about Todd Grantham?
Did you just think about your best throws with Bobo? Or did you think about your worst throws with Bobo? What was just going on in your mind? Yeah, you're right. Mine goes to some weird places. All right, let's close with an email here. Like I said, email us, theogkickoff@gmail.com. We got an email from your boy Brady, a.k.a. Chris Brady. And I say Chris because it ties into what we just experienced with one Will Stein. So Chris says, Will Stein intro with the double Will was a funny note. Reminds me of a job interview in 2024 where again, this is Chris sending this, was interviewed by two employees named Chris with a C and Chris with a K. It was something. The gentleman did a good job, but I couldn't help but feel I was at a disadvantage having to process everything that way. You can't have three Chris's in a job interview. That's tough. That's really tough. Come on. Somebody's going to make a comment at some point, and then it's going to be all that you're thinking of. You're right. Like, that would take true mental discipline. I think you should just get the job if you can get through that interview with three Chris's and not be making constant references to it.
It almost takes you out of the running for the job, because they're sitting there going, how is this team dynamic going to work? I heard Chris and Chris. What's going on here?
We can't just be the place that only hires Chris's. That's a tough look for us. I don't know what the lawsuit situation would be. Oh, they only love Chris's. That's what it says on Nextdoor. And then Brady, your boy, also adds, following up on caffeine/coffee. I drink coffee on days I'm in my office because it's provided. Confirm Connor would have had reached an even higher peak performance with coffee in college. Yep. I discovered cold brew in 2019 while doing final junior semester projects, and it was life-changing. Not sure the hot coffee only thing is really regional. People drink all types of cold stuff up here. He's in Philadelphia, right? Well,
yes.
Yeah, so up here. Okay, that makes sense. But I'm definitely not getting an iced coffee in January. Seems seasonal to me more than anything. If there's a regional aspect, it seems to me it boils down to seasonality. Iced coffee is really the only reasonable choice in Florida 10 to 12 months out of the year. The latest I'll drink caffeine is 7:30 or 8 p.m. That's late. Just had a Diet Coke at 7:15. I did energy drinks throughout college. Shout out to the white Monster cans, but haven't regularly in 5 to 6 years. Trying to get better at the timing, though, as I can't imagine it is helping my sleep. Yeah, it's probably not. It's probably not helping your sleep. 7:30 to 8 o'clock doing caffeine. I won't even do that by accident, Will. I can't. Even if I have a day in which I know I'm up till 3 a.m., I think that would still keep me up all night. Just the mental processing, I'm having caffeine way later than normal. And then I would just be in my head at 3 a.m. trying to fall asleep going, why did I have caffeine at 7:30 at night? It was a mistake.
Yeah, I respect Chris a lot, because he did a hard reset when he got into the corporate world. He was just that part of the he was just the age where he still got affected by COVID pretty bad, because he was in service, the service industry at that point in time, and he just had no kind of barometers on his life because like that, it suspended his work for a while. And as soon as he got into corporate, he just hard stopped everything. Like he like set his clock. He's like really good about sleeping and all that. And he's a guy who hates to waste time. One thing that's really funny about him though is he loves trains, and they got a lot of accessible transportation up in Philly. So I could imagine him ripping just like a hot coffee, taking an extra whatever about a time on a train, but just smiling ear to ear, excited about the SEPTA system. Like he's living the dream up there in Philly.
That sounds like a nice day. Rip a coffee and go ride a train.
You guys are similar types of human. You guys have met. He's a little bit more intense, a little bit more. He's Philly versus Chicago. He doesn't really have the politeness to him. He's got kind of the grit to him, but yeah, I can see it.
Do I still come across as Chicago?
I think you're kind of your own thing now.
If you were to just guess where I'm from without looking at anything in my background or anything like that here, which I realize is a really bad indicator and it always throws people off of like people that hop on with a call and they're like, wait, where are you again? Did you say you were in Florida? It doesn't really look like it. Do people who listen to this show think that I'm from the suburbs of Chicago? Maybe do, maybe don't. Email us, theogkickoff@gmail.com. Where does it sound like I'm from? I think we both sound different than what our roots would suggest, I think. Because you speak way faster than someone who spent their entire life in the South.
Well, occasion's different than the South. We talk really fast, but yeah,
that's true.
I have my own little weird. That's the beauty of the melting pot of America is that things start to shift. So I kind of have my own thing. I think you have your own thing. I could see you kind of being in like a not a punk band, but kind of an alt band from Chicago with the beard. There's the one that I always reference that their name escapes me right now, but I think the beard is your tell there.
Fall Out Boy?
No, they're from Chicago. I'll think they sing Satellite. I'm blanking on it, but yeah.
It's not Sum 41. It's not All American Rejects. Oh, what is it? Who is it? They did this song. Now we're getting really into the weeds here. There is a punk
Rise
band.
Against.
Okay. That wasn't who I was thinking of. But I will come back to that at some point and at a random date when I'm able to remember who it was. I will drop it randomly in the middle of an episode. All right. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to The Next Round as well as the OG Kickoff on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter @CJ O'Gara. I go so hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.